sharing this shit out on mines. I'm sharing it out on Twitter. Please share it out on your social medias. I'll be done in a minute. Let's go, let's go.
I can't figure you out now. I see all blue. There is so much cold in you, and the silence is so loud when you go. I just stay dancing with my shadow all day. Watch the time. I can't find the point where our two paths align. But you're the night sky. I'm trying to see your stars, but I've always feared the dark. Now I see brightly. I can feel your silence. You always feel so far when your stars have burnt out and your heart makes no sound. I'll find valid in your eyes. You'll always be my night sky. 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 You and I don't together like we can change the weather tonight.
All right. Getting close, guys. I got that all shared out on my social medias. Please go ahead and share it out on your social medias. That would be great. You got a Sunday night show. Of course, Sunday night means Sunday night interview review. So we are going to be doing our Sunday night interview review tonight. We got Chris Hedges and Cornel West. I've got quite a lot. Quite a lot. I'm going to wait for a minute here, see if anybody else wants to join before we get started on that big first one. First show is a big show. Or I mean the first. You know what I mean, right? Maybe. I don't know. Anywho. Yeah, so like I said, we got Ukraine, we got climate change. I got the end of the show is going to be all about Elon Musk. Like the whole second half is Elon Musk. So I got a lot of interview stuff tonight. All right. So gonna try to get this all. All right. All right, all right, all right, all right. Trying to figure this out. Figure what it's all about. All right. That's interesting that the song is just done, huh? Like I said, share it. Follow me, please. We're going to be smoking a bowl and watching Cornell here in a second. I just want to give everybody a minute. Share the link out, like the link, whatever you got to do. We're about to hit Cornel West. Cornel West with Chris Hedges. Two of the best minds we have out there right now. Shit, where's my phone? There you are. Gotta get my phone so I can get the YouTube chat on. That's kind of how the weirdness that I roll. I'm watching my Twitch chat on my notebook. I got my YouTube chat on my phone. I do not seem to be getting any joiners this early. So I guess we will just start it up. Spark your bowl, grab your drink, hit your vape pen, whatever your fucking deal is, man. Let's chill out and check out some super intense fucking interviews. Man, there is nothing light on the docket tonight, guys. But thanks for hanging out. Thanks for joining me. Stony Progressive is usually around midnight. And yeah, we got about a half hour till midnight. So let's get this first segment in before we get our midnight crowd.
America's soul. But then I wondered, does a country have a soul? So I'll let you take it from there.
Well, first, I want to begin by saluting you, my dear brother. I want the world to know that I believe you are one of the great prophetic and progressive voices of our time, and I stand in deep solidarity with you, both as brother. As you know, we spent much time together, going to jails together, taught in jails together, broke bread and talked about Dostoevsky and Flaubert and Sartre and Lukács, Du Bois, and James
What's up,
Cone.
Celestial Road? Celestial Road, cool name. I like it. Welcome to the show. Good evening, yo.
I just want to know I love you, though, brother. You and sister Eunice and your family. But no, I think that when we talk about the soul of a nation, you're talking about what its dominant soul craft is. And a soul craft is a dominant way of life, a mode of being in the world. And the United States has always had a market-driven way of being in the world. And that its sense of thinking it could conquer the world without losing the best of what's in it. We have a great prophetic tradition in the United States. You talked about the black side, but we got the white side of Melville. We got the white side of Ann Braden and a Rabbi Heschel, or Middle Eastern side of Edward Said and others. But when you look at how commodification in the form of arms manufacturing,
All right, cheers.
war profiteers, commodification in the form of politicians bought off by big money, legalized bribery, normalized corruption, commodification in the form of our education, so that vocation becomes simply profession, so that calling simply become careers, so that education becomes more a matter of schooling, gaining access to a skill to gain money and live large in some vanilla suburb, rather than genuine education, which is critical formation, learning how to be a human being and a citizen in such a way that you can be a force for good and beauty and justice. We are in a profound moment of
not here yet, so I had to check my own
spiritual
volumes.
decadence in the United States. Militarism abroad, grotesque wealth inequality at home, white supremacy, the face of the escalating neo-fascist movement of Trump and others, ecological catastrophe looming, possible nuclear catastrophe with a gangster in Russia able to push the button at any time, and our own gangster in the White House who can push the button at any time, you see. Neoliberal gangsters are not identical with neo-fascist gangsters. Yes, there's differences, But a gangster is someone who was cold, callous, and indifferent to the vulnerable. And we can make arguments, invasions and occupations of Iraq, mass incarceration regime, siding with Wall Street and crushing the lives of poor and working people in the case of Biden. And with Putin, of course, you just have a matter of massive domination, subjugation, regimentation, and repression within his own Russian context. And it's just a matter of telling the truth. And that's what you've always tried to do. And that's what I've always tried to do. Neither one of us have a monopoly on truth, but we try to speak the truth because we are in deep solidarity with those Franz Fanon called the wretched of the earth.
Is there a period in American history that you think is analogous to where we are now?
Well, in some ways, it's like the 1890s, in which you actually have reactionary, xenophobic, market-driven forces in the driver's seat, what Lenin called the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. Workers had no right to organize. Black people were re-subjugated in a vicious way with the neo-slavery after 244 years of slavery. Indigenous peoples with wounded knee, more and more attacked, the genocidal effects becoming even more and more apparent. The railroad strike of 1877, the crushing of the working classes in the name of the bosses, the marginalizing even more intensely of women who are always marginalized. There's some analogies. The difference is that America was a transcontinental empire at that time and was beginning to reach out. It would bring in 8 million people of color in Guam and Philippines and Hawaii and Puerto Rico and other places. Whereas now America, as the largest, the mightiest, the most powerful empire in the history of the world, is in deep internal decay and more experiencing the constraints and limitations of its power abroad.
I want to go back to that period of the 1890s because it was on the cusp of, as you mentioned, the expansion of America.
Already on mute. Okay, so you didn't even hear that. Alright, I was on mute. I'm not high enough to do this yet. Okay, so LA Kush Cake. I got, Jesus, I already forgot. Ruby Slippers Wax for my bowl for the night. I'm putting myself back on mute, putting him back on full screen. We're going to smoke this bowl and just listen to two people that are of intellect that I only wish I could fathom. Because, yeah, I feel like I'm above average, but these guys are fucking... So they talk over my head, so I'm going to let them talk for the next 15-20 minutes while I smoke this bowl. And yeah, throw anything in the chat you guys want to see. If you know of any good interviews, send me the link. I'm more than happy to check it out. Like I said, I got a full show, but I'll add an interview on if there's a good one out there if anybody knows of. Also looking for any big names for tomorrow and podcast for Tuesday. Anything new? Throw it out there, guys. All right, let's get into it. I'm going to mute myself, and we're going to listen to these guys.
Into a more traditional world empire, but there was tremendous opposition to that expansion led by figures like Mark Twain and others who I think quite presciently understood what it would do. I think they used the word soul, what it would do to the soul of the country, and I think they've been proven right. Perhaps you can comment on that.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Mark Twain is our greatest comic writer, and he stands with Toni Morrison and Herbert Melville and William Faulkner and Thomas Pynchon and a few others at the highest level of artistic literary achievement in the history of the American empire. He, like William James, deeply anti-imperialist, cutting against the grain. You're absolutely right in that regard. But he coined the Gilded Age. And by gilded, what he meant was the glitz, the blitz, the obsession with spectacle, the obsession with image, the obsession with celebrity status. He himself was celebrity, critical of celebrity. It's like David Bowie's fame. David Bowie's famous. He got an indictment of fame with that deep funk. That would impress George Clinton and Bootsy Collins when that song came out. So it is with Mark Twain. We're living in the second Gilded Age. You're absolutely right. It's all about glitz and blitz and spectacle and money and status. It's all about brand and not about cause. You and I are fundamentally committed not to any brand. We're committed to a cause, the cause of poor and working people all around the world with deep, deep stress on struggles against white supremacy and male supremacy, homophobia, transphobia, or any ideology that loses sight of the humanity of people. It could be disabled, it could be Dalits, it could be Roma, it could be landless peasants. It could be any human being who's being crushed, given asymmetric relations of power. That is a great tradition, but it's a tradition that is such a threat that is usually repressed. You're undergoing ugly censorship, cancellation, attempt to wipe out your own programs, to wipe out your precious words in conversation. That's par for the course in the moment in which war is at the center of the consciousness of a nation. We know truth is always the first casualty. In any context of war. And you begin to find out, of course, what people are really made of. It's very interesting to see universities that make claims about objectivity in their scholarship. And as soon as a country goes to war, they become major cheerleaders and bootlickers of the vanguard who are promoting the war. All the resources, all the discourses, all the orientation behind war. We say, well, wait a minute. We're concerned about truth and goodness and beauty. We want to tell the truth across the board. We keep track of the gangsterism, be it Russians, be it Americans, be it Indians, be it Hungarians, whoever, across the board. And that's how you get in trouble, brother. That's why you're in trouble right now, but you're bouncing back. You're bouncing back strong.
I want to talk about Max Weber. Weber in Politics as a Vocation talks about eternal vigilance, that the moment you turn your back, whatever advances you may make, and we talked about the 1890s, certainly a low point for the working class, the reign of terror, Jim and Jane Crow in the South following the collapse of Reconstruction. And yet you did see a resurgence, which was then crushed by Woodrow Wilson, the Espionage Act, the Sedition Act, which were not used against German spies, but were used against radicals. Joe Hill is hanged. Emma Goldman is deported. There does seem to be this kind of push and pull. And I wondered if you could explain that, because we certainly seem at this moment at a low point. We saw the rise of powerful popular movements in the 1960s, the anti-war movement, the women's movement, the Black Power movement, and now it seems like we've just been rolled backwards. Can you talk about that cycle?
I think it has something to do with the fact that the most powerful ideology in the modern world, which is nationalism and the allegiance to the nation state, and convincing people and citizens to live and die for the nation state. That has sit at the center of so much of how we understand the world. And therefore, those of us who are internationalists, those of us who believe that human beings in Ethiopia and Guatemala and Brazil and Bangladesh and India and Japan and Iran and Turkey are human.
I already knew the information, but I thought the fact was interesting. It was Asia makes up 30% of the land of the planet and 60% of the population of the planet. And the reason it's interesting is because the 60% of the people that live in Asia, like 50% of them live in what we would call third world level of standard of living, and all those people have to, they make our fucking clothes, they make everything on the fucking planet. Bangladesh, Indonesia, freaking Malaysia, freaking oh freaking, there's so many of them. There's like 4 countries there that have more population than America, and yet we treat them like they're freaking slaves. They live, Myanmar. They live in second world conditions or third world, and they make everything on the planet. Why don't they get a quality of life? Why do we get to live in lavishness and they have to live stacked on top of each other?
Beings, all having the same value, significance, and status. It means we cut radically against the grain. See, when you think of class, most workers will die for the flag of the nation state before they die for an international workers movement. Most black people, no matter all the talk about race and blackness, beautiful thing, that's fine. But most black people, where they live, would fight for the flag and the nation state before they would fight for blackness. Most women, talk about gender all you want, critiques of patriarchy, very important, they get behind the nation state. And so it's very difficult to be consistent in your intellectual and your moral and your political practice to create international solidarity in a context in which nationalism is so intense and so powerful, blinding, that generates a whole host of exclusions and repressions, censorships, and so forth. And it is what it is. We have to confront the power of that nationalism, but we have to bear witness to an international solidarity. The names that you mentioned, Du Bois, we can go on and on with Martin Luther King Jr.'s critique of the Vietnam War, his internationalism, Ella Baker, we can go on. That's what is needed now more than ever, and yet it seems to be so weak and so feeble.
I want to talk a little bit about the kind of war fever that's gripped the country around the Ukraine. I was, as you know, in Eastern Europe in 1989 as a reporter covering the collapse of the Soviet bloc and the Soviet Union. We talked about the peace dividend. We thought very naively that NATO was obsolete. In fact, NATO has become a very aggressive force. Ask anyone in the Middle East. It has expanded now throughout Eastern and Central Europe. And what is that kind of war fever done? And juxtapose that with the 20 years of war crimes that we have committed in countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, and everywhere else.
I mean, I just wish that the mainstream press had spent as much time keeping track of the vicious atrocities visited upon Iraqis and those in Yemen right now, or some of the invasion and occupation in Latin America by U.S. forces as they've done with our precious brothers and sisters in the Ukraine. I think we all recognize war crimes are committed by nation states and empires across the board. And so in our attempt to be consistent, you see, and say, well, wait a minute now. We are in profound solidarity with our precious Ukrainian brothers and sisters. We're in solidarity with our Russian brothers and sisters who have the courage to protest and maybe go to jail for 15 years, because we look at the world through moral and spiritual lens from the vantage point of the least of these, echoes of the 25th chapter of Matthew, of poor people and working people. But we also recognize the American empire has no moral authority whatsoever when it comes to the violation of international law, the undercutting of national sovereignties of other countries. Over and over again, we've seen this. And so if, for example, years ago, Gorbachev was promised that there would not be 1 inch added to the NATO countries, and now 14 are added. If, in fact, there's missiles in Poland and Romania, and no missiles in Canada and Mexico, then we have to be very honest in terms of not in any way justifying, excusing the barbaric criminal activities of Putin and the Russian army, but recognizing that the United States has no moral status given its history, given its record of doing similar things, and not a mumbling word of the mainstream press, not a mumbling word of one congressman or woman. When you look at the situation of our precious Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza and the West Bank, how many was it in 50 days? Over 2,000 Palestinians killed, 550 babies. That's more in number than the Ukraine. A Palestinian baby has exactly the same moral status as a Ukrainian baby or any other baby. Jewish baby, precious. Palestinian baby, precious. Sounds so simple, but we get in trouble by trying to be consistent, my brother.
Well, you're no longer at Harvard because you have moral consistency.
Well, I can tell you one thing, that if you are in profound solidarity with Palestinians struggling for decency and dignity and are explicit about it, then you are going to have to pay a cost. There's no doubt about that. That's true at Harvard, it's true at Yale, it's true at Chicago, it's true across the board. It's just the way things are configured these days, that there's certain issues that you can't really tell the full truth about yet. Believe me, in the years to come, in the decades to come, people are going to wonder, how could it be that the United States can get so fired up about one section of the world? 100,000 precious Ukrainians admitted to the United States. I give them a standing ovation. Please come, please come. But what about our Haitians? What about those from other parts of the world, especially those who are of color? The level of hypocrisy of the neoliberal elites that you've talked about, that Brother Glenn talks about, and others, has to be pointed out.
Well,
it has to be pointed out. And it's juxtaposed to the barbaric treatment of the Ukrainians by the Russians. But the neoliberal elites have their own kind of vicious, barbaric treatment of those outside of the U.S. borders, and mass incarceration regimes, those inside the U.S. borders.
Isn't it just a confirmation of the underlying racism that Ukrainians are somehow worthy victims and Palestinians or Yemenis are not?
It's both racism, but it's also religion, because you remember in the Bosnian situation, you had Muslims. You had a lot of Muslims who looked like white folk.
Right.
And they were still not treated in the way that they ought, given their human dignity. And many of us were, as you know, fighting that and bringing power and pressure to bear. But you're right. Deep, deep racism on the one hand, and then the anti-Muslim perceptions and practices on the other have to be pointed out. Very much so.
You've spent your life in the academy. Would you finish Harvard in 3 years? I don't know how anyone does that. And then would you lead the Thomas Pynchon book club when in your spare time? Really, that's all frightening to the rest of us. I want to talk about the academy. You, of course, went to Princeton. I also want to talk about philosophy, because you're trained as a philosopher. This is you mentioned this in the New Yorker interview, but you've never taught philosophy. I think that's kind of fascinating on purpose. That was your decision. But let's talk about what's happened in the academy.
I mean, the academy itself has been so commodified, so bureaucratized, highly specialized, so it's hard to get a sense of the whole. If you look at the political economy of so many elite universities, you'll see who the donors are, you'll see who the benefactors are, you'll see who provides the money. And it's very difficult when you're tied to corporate elites. It's very difficult when you're tied to government contracts to tell the truth about corporate elites, to tell the truth about government. That's just a fact. It's like if you in the old days when you had the Catholic universities tied to the Pope, then it's going to be difficult to have a serious critique of the Pope the way Martin Luther would, for example, or Calvin or Sweetley. Erasmus, of course, is a complicated figure. I love Erasmus. He was very critical, but he held on. He stayed within, but he stayed away from the university. The scholasticism, University of Paris. No, this is Praise the Folly. Complaint of Peace. Handbook for Militant Christians. That's the Erasmus that I love. And why is Erasmus important? Because he was someone who, whatever institutional affiliation he had, he was still willing to think for himself. He would stand up and say, Saint Socrates, pray for us. Like, he's talking about a pagan. He said, so what? Socrates is my spiritual comrade as a self-styled Christian. And I think we say the same thing, bell hooks, Buddhist. Hard to conceive of my work without her. Malcolm X, prophetic Islamic brother, prophetic Muslim. I can't conceive of myself without Malcolm X. James Baldwin, agnostic to the core with a deep spirituality. I can't conceive myself as a Christian without James Baldwin. Ambedkar, one of the great public intellectuals of the 20th century, Dalit, converted from Hinduism to Buddhism. I can't conceive of myself. I'm still influenced by Gandhi, even though Gandhi, of course, falls so short in terms of dismantling caste. He has a spirituality that still touches me, that a Howard Thurman and a William Stewart Nelson and a Benjamin Mays and a Mordecai Johnson and a Martin Luther King Jr. would build on as strategy, tactic, and as way of life for hated people, black folk. And I'm thinking of James.
Take everything and build. Take everything and build on it yourself.
93 years old.
Great. Good shit.
Going strong. New book, Revolutionary, Nonviolent. The foreword, is by Angela Davis. Isn't that interesting? Sister Angela writing for James Lawson, the great freedom fighter after Martin. What he called critical plantation capitalism is what he talks about, right? Always critical to militarism. Methodist preacher, pastor, loving the people all the way down. Love that about the brother.
So you finish at Princeton, you study with the great Sheldon Woolen. I think he was on your doctoral committee. But
he was a main advisor.
You go to Union, you go to a seminary. And I want you to talk about that. You're trained as a philosopher. I think of you as probably our preeminent moral philosopher, but you don't teach philosophy. So what's up with that?
Yeah, again, the academic department's so narrow. So we should never confuse and conflate a philosopher, a lover of wisdom, with a professor of philosophy. A professor of philosophy usually is one who engages in an analysis of the professional literature of the guild. And you can learn much from them as well, but they tend not to have a sense of the whole. They haven't read enough Cicero and Quintilian and Vico, where you have to separate the forest from the shining of the nuts and the polishing of the bottom of the trees. You got to get a sense of the whole. You need a synoptic vision and a synecdochic imagination and a synthetic analysis. You can see the relation of parts and parts. So it's almost impossible to do that in most philosophy departments. And I refuse to do it because I know I had to call it. I'm from Glen Elder, chocolate side of Sacramento. I'm from Shiloh Baptist Church. We have a sense of the whole. We have a calling. We have a sense of our vocation and mission and purpose. And what is that? To be blues men and women in the life of the mind. We want to be intellectuals the way the musicians are, because the musicians are an extension of the community. They have the same spiritual and cultural properties as the very people that you are connected with organically. So when they look at a brother West or they look at a brother Hedges, they say, just like Coltrane, just like Frank Sinatra, he touches our souls. He empowers us. There's a use and a function in the gifts that he gives that allows us to be more fortified in our living, rather than when they see a professor of philosophy. Oh, he's very smart indeed. Can't follow much of what he does, but I know he's very smart.
I almost never watch the whole thing on Sundays. I usually try to watch like 60-70% of the intervio, but it's these two, so it's hard to like cut it off. So there's 6 minutes left of them chatting. I'm going to let it play through, and then we'll actually be more interactive because I don't want to cut these guys off.
I sat in on a lecture you gave at Harvard
it's
on
hard
Kierkegaard.
to interrupt them.
And
I can't talk over them or
in extremely high esteem. But in that lecture hall, I watched you do what pedants cannot do.
And get very high, which I just did.
Kierkegaard, and you brought it. You first of all brought Kierkegaard to life.
Coming up with climate change,
you were able to synthesize it in such a way that it immediately became relevant to every single student sitting in that lecture hall. And I think that really is the definition of a great intellectual. I wonder if Kierkegaard has a lot to say to us at this particular moment in with American malaise.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, he was dealing with the sense of the absurd. He was dealing with the sense of self-gratification and self-indulgence among the bourgeoisie. And we see that in the States among the black bourgeoisie, the white bourgeoisie, the brown bourgeoisie, the obsession with making it as opposed to keeping the faith, being connected with the best of the past in order for the future to be very different. Kierkegaard had a sense, something that's very rare for most academicians, of the catastrophic, not just the problematic.
I hope you all noticed that the real news is where Chris Hedges is right now, because he has been deleted from RT. Always throwing out to those people who have been deleted on RT. That's bullshit censorship.
Envy. That's what Kierkegaard. Marx is the same way. The catastrophe of a capitalist projects out of control. Greed, profit maximization at any cost, leading toward the undercutting of the very condition for the possibility of a healthy planet, let alone the asymmetric relations of power at the workplace where workers are crushed. So it is a Mary Shelley, the catastrophe of male supremacy.
All right, usually for a follow, I'll smoke a bowl.
You see, thinkers like Kierkegaard
it's a little left, so cheers.
are
Thanks for the
concerned
follow.
with a sense of the whole and how we existentially, as concrete human beings in space and time, can mobilize spiritual, moral, political resources in order to be forces for good, and to Coltrane. And that's not an academic project. And given the disciplinary division of knowledge in the professional, managerial, elite formative sites like universities, it's hard to get a larger sense of the whole. Everybody majors in one thing, you get in one discipline, you don't see the connection of one and the other. And when it comes to act, no, it's just getting a job. You're just fitting in some hierarchy. And the end and aim is what? to make the hierarchy more diverse, to make the hierarchy more inclusive. So you get black folk at the top, black presidents and congressmen and women who run the empire, who accommodate themselves to Wall Street, accommodate themselves to a national security state, accommodate themselves to massive surveillance. Thank God for Brother Julian Assange disclosing U.S. war crimes. Thank God for Brother Ed Snowden. We can go right down the line. You and I were at the court case. What was
Chelsea Manning. Chelsea Manning.
Yeah.
We used to drive down at 3 a.m. Were you driving?
We'd drive 3 in the morning. I'd pick you up. And we'd have a good time. But we sat right there behind.
That's right.
Keep track of what? How is the U.S. government, how is the Obama administration going to hide and conceal these vicious war crimes? Isn't it interesting to hear all these voices about war crimes now?
Yeah.
And it's good. I mean, we ought to talk about Putin's war crime. But of course, the sad thing is, the International Court, the only war crime that they've ever punished anybody is Africans. Can you imagine that? The major victims, black people, African people, are the only ones charged.
And Yugoslavia and Liberia. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, Yugoslavia too, maybe. But I mean, it's like, good God Almighty.
Well,
but we can't ever, though, brother, and this is very important, we should never, ever be surprised by evil or paralyzed by despair. We've got to keep engaging in our truth-telling, in our justice-seeking, in our joy-sharing, in our wounded healing, and in being love warriors and freedom fighters. And those names that you started this show off with, all you got to do is add some Curtis Mayfield and Aretha. And they set the highest standards of moral and spiritual excellence, the how you keep keeping on in the midst of overwhelming despair, not allowing despair to have the last word. That's why you continue to write. I continue to write. That's why you have your show. That's why you continue to speak, and I continue to speak. And they're going to have to crush us below the ground before we stop.
That's right.
We're going to be faithful unto death.
Great. That was the great Dr. Cornel West. I want to thank the Real News Network and its production team, Cameron Granadino.
Mad props for the Real News getting freaking Chris Hedges involved in something since he has been censored, deleted. Years and years of work of his deleted. I can't believe they made him delete RT, like all their, like, I can understand, like, okay, you guys got to stop what you're doing, but like deleting everything that they've ever done, it's insane. It's insane. YouTube is basically a video library at this point, and if they delete something like that, that is fucking censorship. That is the most intense type of censorship. Hi, bub. We went outside an hour ago. You got to piss off for a minute, or 45 minutes ago. So yeah. Why you suck up my ass? Why you want my ass, huh? Why you want my ass? Huh? Oh, all day. I haven't worked in like 3 weeks. He's been up my ass every day. Anyhow. Alright. Okay, buddy. Just get me claustrophobic. Okay, go away. Claustrophobic. Ugh. Need me right here. In my face. All the time. All day, every day. Yeah, there you go. Chill out for a little bit. We just went on a W. Fucking needy. So, that was beginning. I got 2 segments. This is Bad Faith, Brianna Joy Gray. She has 2 climate scientists on, 2 of the top, like, elite in their fields. They literally are like 2 of the top people in their firms. And yeah, so they're 2 like elite in their field. And I had 2 little bits I wanted to get from here before we went on to this interview that kind of went viral, got out of hand, and I haven't watched yet, and I'm super excited. I've heard people mention, I'm like, no, I'm saving it for Sunday. Saving it for Sunday. Sunday interviews. Fucking ready for it. Drinking caffeine and super high. Perfect combination. All right, here's 2 clips. I think I got it close. I think I have it written down here. Got it written down. Hopefully this will go nice and smooth.
Soon. I had an op-ed like a week and a half ago that was highly critical of the Biden administration. Then interestingly, the New York Times big podcast yesterday, they basically had a whole show which was exactly along the lines of my op-ed, which was interesting because usually they're not willing to be critical of the president like that. So
interesting. Do you recall any specifics of what they said?
Well, so the whole idea is basically that, you know, the IPCC report says we can't build, and this is why we were protesting last week, right, and getting arrested. The IPCC report basically says we can't build any new fossil fuel infrastructure. What we have now is already going to take us well into catastrophe territory, right? And so when you know, after Putin did his atrocious invasion of Ukraine, which we're all rightly denouncing because it's just absolutely horrifying. There were, you know, deep implications for the energy supply, and so gas prices started going up, partly because the fucking CEOs are taking a bigger, and the shareholders are taking a bigger piece out of it. They're literally capitalizing, like increasing their capital on this disaster, right? And which is something we can talk about later, but I think that has to stop via policy. But anyway, because of that, what does the Biden administration do? First of all, they basically didn't mention climate at all in the State of the Union, right? I could sort of tell, like, the speechwriters were probably like, you know, you probably should at least give it one mention, you know, and then
so
now,
there's not an article about how they
right,
didn't mention it at all.
at all,
Yeah.
right? And now they're like begging to expand fossil fuel production and like release the reserves, and, you know, and even before the invasion of Ukraine, the Biden administration was begging OPEC to expand, and they were, you know, they were approving more drilling permits than Trump did, right, in the same time frame. Yep. So it's just, so they're literally squandering one of the best moments we've ever had in history for educating the public and making the case for getting off of fossil fuels and doing a wartime huge push for renewables, right? So the Biden administration should be totally using the bully pulpit to do that, to educate the public. And instead, they're using the bully pulpit to just expand the fossil fuel industry and enrich these already filthy rich sociopathic fossil fuel CEOs. So they're using the bully pulpit to accelerate us further into climate catastrophe, even though they campaigned somewhat on taking climate action. So that's what my op-ed was about a couple weeks ago, and that's what the daily episode was about yesterday. And that's also why we were protesting.
Part of why I'm...
So yeah, he wrote an op-ed and got attacked. And yeah, saying that, you know, they're not doing anything. They're not doing shit, and that's why these guys are protesting. We got the left. The left didn't do anything. Oh, I don't have the exact seconds on this. Oh no. I think it's... Why did I not put the seconds? See, I thought I had it smooth, and now I'm looking at it.
They need to try to think strategically, and they also have to... I think what's more important maybe is taking a risk, right? So if you're in a position...
Because, I mean, let's think about all of the successful campaigns we've had in our, not even our history, but in the history of the world, like
Here we go.
Gandhi, the suffragette, South African apartheid, Martin Luther King Jr. and the Freedom Riders. Like, those were all centered around nonviolent direct action as a strategy. And seeing that risk, like not being able to accuse us of taking our paychecks in our ivory towers, like really mobilizes people. And it sucks for us because it means we have to risk. But I think it really is the most effective way.
We need a diversity of tactics, lots of different tactics. And what the civil disobedience action isn't necessarily the most important thing. There's a lot of different things people can do. They need to try to think strategically. And they also have to, I think what's more important maybe is taking a risk, right? So if you're in a position where you can take a risk, you do that soul searching. You weigh what's happening to our planet against the other things that you care about, like your career, for example, and you decide that it's worth the risk. That sense of risk, that pushing yourself and the butterflies in your stomach, that's critical. Because if you don't feel like you're taking a risk, if you're still just staying in your comfort zone, then you're not pushing against social boundaries. We're incredibly sensitive instruments at reading the social room, so to speak, right? Second, I would say that the most important thing is that we just get large numbers of people engaging in this kinds of civil disobedience. I think there's a chance that whether we end up saving what can still be saved, or we end up into this incredibly horrific, dystopian, hot and deadly future, could depend on whether this sort of movement stays just like a handful of scientists, or whether it breaks into the mainstream and we start seeing this happening thousands and thousands of times over. So I'd say it's the two kind of rules of thumb here are.
So yeah, these are climate activists and climate scientists, climate activists and climate scientists from America. And then I have not yet watched, but is very next here in a minute is going to be the activist clip from Britain, the British TV that was just fucking viral and awesome, and I've been putting off. So almost there. There's another minute or so I want to watch these guys.
Are taking risks as an activist and just growing the numbers, getting more and more numbers.
One thing that I think is really powerful about this movement specifically is that Scientist Rebellion in the US, it's just a handful of people, as Peter said, but there are country level groups all over the world. So on April,
I did not. I've actually just I knew of Brianna Joy Gray for quite a while, but I have just picked up this show the last couple weeks. Just noticed it, just picked it up, started watching it here and there. She does have good interviews. So maybe like 3 weeks ago I started watching it. So I did not. Virgil, Texas. I did not know about that. Write that one down. Was it on this show? Because, yeah, I didn't know they were going to do that. Sorry, get tongue-tied when I'm trying to think twice. But, yeah, I had no clue. I will look into that. I got pulled out here. I think that might have been all.
there were hundreds of scientists in over 25 countries participating in some type of civil disobedience. Not all of them were risking arrest because in some countries, with some governments, that's absolutely not safe at all.
It's like in Colombia. In Colombia, climate activists get killed. And yeah, government activists really of any kind get killed sometimes in Colombia, which is our number 2 supported country. It's freaking disgusting. They kill climate activists, they kill political activists in Colombia, and they kill journalists. But in Colombia, we give a lot of weapons. We give them a lot of money and a lot of weapons. Second only to Israel. Well, maybe this year might be Ukraine, but every year the past 20 years, you're looking at Colombia number 2 and Israel number 1 as far as weapons and financial assistance.
And so people were really like assessing the needs of their own particular location, like crafting a type of direct action that meets their local needs, but acting in coordination, like in solidarity. And I think that was really powerful.
Well said.
Yeah. So
Yeah, there we go. All right. Like I said, I thought that was almost done. Yes! All right. So, good morning, Britain. This might get me copyrighted off of YouTube. I think like 2/3 of my shit's going to get me taken off of YouTube. So, hey, a couple people on YouTube, if I get taken down, I dropped that link in there. Let me know if you can't see it or not, but the link is in there for Twitch because, yep, they might take me down. Twitch is free. Just come on over. But yeah. All right. So this is from Good Morning Britain. A lot of times British shows are a little more okay, but Richard Madeley clashes with climate activists in fiery oil protest debate. And it's only got 200,000 views, and I've like literally seen every leftist talk about it in the last couple of days. And I have not watched it yet. And it's almost a week old, and I saved it for my Sunday show because I love debates and oh boy, debates. Debates and interviews on Sundays. Whew. And it'll be mostly debates coming up here in the near future. So let's do some interviews.
Say that they need to bring an end to the use of fossil fuels. So are they in danger of turning people off that cause by these actions? Well, let's have a chat. Joining us now to discuss this is Miranda Wheelerhan. She's a Just Stop Oil activist. She says that we have to move away from oil for good. And journalist Larry Turner, who thinks that activists are irritating when they disrupt travel and they block roads. We'll come to you in a minute, Larry.
They're irritating when they block travel and they stop roads. Fuck you. This whole fucking point is to get your fucking attention and disrupt your fucking cush life. Wow, no wonder I get freaking age verification on YouTube.
Many people would agree that we have to wean ourselves off oil, we have to wean ourselves off fossil fuels, we have to develop renewables. I certainly feel that. But at the same time, they deeply resent having their personal lives massively interrupted by the actions that people like you are taking. And they can't get fuel for their cars, they can't get fuel for their central heating systems. They worry that if something bad happens, that an ambulance won't get to them because that won't have fuel. Do you accept that you're possibly alienating people who, in a general sense, would support your background cause?
You can receive free cell phone service.
Wow, that was quick. All right. Yeah, that's corporate media for you. They love to pack the ads on. That, and they're probably sick of people watching this. They like to put a lot of ads on videos they don't want us to watch a lot, it seems. But I've heard that she just owns them, and they're just all in their, like, flaky little, cush little millionaire bubble, like, no, you're cushing up my life. Well, they're just getting owned by this girl, who's a young adult. I don't know, early 20s, but obviously quite half the age of the people in there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't think any of us want to be disrupting people's lives, but I think given the science and the things that academics are saying about what oil is causing around the world and in this country too, this is the level of action that needs to be taken when our government is failing on their energy policies and their climate pledges.
But you'd accept, wouldn't you, that it's a very complicated discussion to be had. It's a very complicated thing. And this Just Stop Oil slogan is very playgroundish, isn't it? It's very Vicky Pollard. It's quite childish. Just stop oil. I mean, come on, there's more to say than that, isn't there?
I would say that the answers are actually very simple. We need to stop new oil licensing, and that's all we're asking. You know, with the oil reserves that we have now and the oil fields that we have that are still going, that would provide us with 8 years of oil if we said no to new oil, and that's what we're asking for.
But how do the blockades advance that argument? They don't, do they? They simply cause nothing but disruption, and you get a negative reaction. I've got to tell you, we were expecting to get some messages of support from.
Oh, you fucking people are so fucking delicate in your freaking ivory towers that you interrupt our workday and you interrupt capitalism. Well, that's the fucking point. We're trying to wake you up. We're trying to jolt you.
We haven't had one, not one. We've had nothing but furious complaints from people. Nothing positive at all.
I wonder.
She is furious right now. Oh, she is ready to scream. Please tell me she's ready to scream. I've not watched this yet. This is, again, I've been saving this for Sunday night.
If any of you have read the latest IPCC reports that have come out this year, you know, what they have said is that we are on the road for climate catastrophe. We are on the road for 3 degrees of warming. This will happen to my generation, to your children's generation, potentially to your grandchildren. And I think we have a moral responsibility to act now. You know, we're supposed to be climate leaders. We're geopolitical leaders. We could set the way for the whole planet by committing to stopping oil, moving to energy efficiency, moving to renewables, moving to insulation. And I think the children and the future deserve at least that.
There are, from, I think, 2020, Lowry...
The lady next to her is just so upset right now. She's so frustrated, like, I only got 30 years left of this planet. What do I care? My kids, they're going to be fine. They're rich. She's so fucking frustrated right now. Like, why do I have to listen to this bitch? I'm going to tear her up. Oh, they're so stupid.
The source of UK electricity from renewables outstripped what we use from fossil fuels. So we are, as a country, moving in the right direction, but clearly not as fast as we should be. And that is the problem. There's a sense of urgency that the eco-activists have, that they fear that the rest of us don't embody that. And certainly government policy might not be, you know, reacting to that sense of urgency, which is required.
I think... the problem I have is this idea that the one group of people have decided that they are the ones to save the world. And there's a certain po-faced, incredibly irritating... I'm getting it coming off in waves.
Okay, you stupid bitch. First of all, anything that happens anywhere always happens with political pressure through activism, political pressure through the masses, protests, or... everybody, you know, polls and people, you know, public push, and then the government finally drags their ass, okay? So nothing ever happens without it. Nothing. People were protesting for, no, Just no.
Will be here like, how dare you question us because we know what's right. I'm going to glue my hand to some tarmac and then I'm going to be a martyr and I'm going to be a good person while the rest of us can't get on with our days. I mean, you know, with respect, Miranda is 20. I'm more than twice her age. You know, I've got kids, I've got a job, I've got an elderly mother. We have to get on with our lives. Most people feel they're doing their bit. They are doing the recycling.
I've got an elderly mother. That's your big, like, oh, I mean, I got somebody who might die any minute. That's, you know, that takes precedent over your fucking climate change. I mean, my kids, they might, you know, be climate refugees at some point, but whatever.
They're trying. I can't afford an electric car. I can't afford a heat pump. Most people can't afford that. The
Bullshit. Bullshit.
people that the campaigners should be focusing on is the government, not on ordinary people. But it's about ego. There's no doubt that we've had a winter.
Those faces are about right.
Without any protest, but as soon as the sun comes out, oh, it's eco-festival time. And it is a festival. It's a big jamboree. It's let's get on social media, let's sit down with a placard, let's advertise to my friends what a great person I am. While the rest...
It's getting the information out. It is fucking doing what news won't do, because news won't show these protests. News won't go out there. They try to hide these protests.
People have to go to work, can't get
and
to
there are
work.
people that have to go to work, can't go to work and participate in capitalism. We can't participate in capitalism.
907.
Fuck you, lady. Wow. Can't participate in capitalism for a few fucking minutes. God. Ignorance is so fucking... Oh my god. I'm not even fighting... I mean, just... It doesn't make any sense. Like, seriously, lady. You have kids. Why aren't you a little nervous? Why aren't you even at all concerned? Because you're a selfish bitch, and all you care about is making money, and then, I guess, your mom or something, because that was like that was like your big freaking leaning stick was like, elderly mother. I have kids and an elderly mother. I have responsibilities. I can't be late for work. I have responsibilities. This kid doesn't have responsibilities. Therefore, their point is invalid. Like, fuck you. That's a horrible thing to fucking...
That's what you're saying. The United Nations are telling us if we get to 1.7 degrees of warming, half of the population will be exposed to climate conditions that are unlivable,
And that's
unworkable.
what you're here to talk about. But I suppose the point isn't about...
1.7 Celsius, half the planet becomes unlivable where people are currently living. That means half the planet becomes climate refugees at 1.7. We are currently looking at about 2050. Our current projections if we don't get off oil in the next 8 to 10 years. 2050, half the planet becomes uninhabitable. That's climate scientists, what they just put out. The TP, the IP, whatever, freaking, I'm trying to do like 3 things, sorry. And I'm realizing I need some nutrients. But, yeah.
Saying the facts over and over again. It's about the actual protest and about the disruption. And I suppose for some people...
You have to disrupt shit. You have to get attention. That's why you block highways. That's why you don't fucking just sit in the park with signs. You have to actually get into the road and block traffic a little bit. You have to. You have to. If you're just on the fucking road with a fucking billboard, that's not a protest. That's a fucking gathering. Taking the freaking risk of being arrested is being a protester.
I suppose it is the disconnect between understanding what you think you're achieving by creating disruption to ordinary people versus those big, very...
So they're calling the protesters selfish, but not the people who are, you interrupted my commute by 20, 30 minutes. You interrupted my commute by an hour. You made me late for work. Seriously? They're talking about being, like, they're the person that's going to have to go to jail and be harassed, possibly beat up in a little, I mean, I don't know how the English cops are, but if you're in America, you might have a black and blue eye. You might have a little when you get out of there. So you're willing. I mean, uncomfort. I've heard, sometimes protests they sit like 13 to 20 people in a small cell because they don't have room, so they jam you in, so you're just very uncomfortable for 6 to 12 hours or whatever. So yeah, no, that doesn't sound selfish to me. That's not a selfish act.
Issues that we're all aware of, but clearly you are very passionate about. How do you think it affects the speeding up of those policies that you want? What is the connection between the two?
You're saying that you're aware of this, but I don't think that you are aware. I don't think you are aware, and I don't think the government and the media are doing their duty to show how serious this is.
But you know better than we do.
We're trying to uphold the science. The science is being ignored. The academics are being ignored.
Is it ignored? But we're not allowed to get diesel cars after 2020.
We live in a democracy.
But we live in a democracy, and our government doesn't do what the fucking democracy says. She's gonna ignore it, and guess what? England is just like America in this. I know that. So, what people vote for does not actually apply. Corporations lean fucking politicians all the time, and what you vote for doesn't actually apply. Public policy is more upon what corporations want than what the mass wants. And only by public pressure do you get what the mass wants.
And it's not the right of one small group of people to tell everybody else how to live. Go through the democratic process. Talk to your
They're not telling you how to
MPs.
live. They're interrupting your day for one fucking day once in a while and asking you to cut out fucking... and asking us... Oh, my God. Which one's selfish here? Now, the news network is saying that the protesters are selfish, but in my book, the one who's not willing to change for the betterment of the planet is the one that's selfish. Grow up.
Government elected who is doing what you want them to do. Don't just simply think, well, we can change everything.
No. Government does not do what we elect them to do. Government does what the corporations ask them to do. In all of Western civilization, all of I'll name these countries every freaking show if I have to. UK, US, Australia, Germany, France, all same ownership. Okay?
If that was going to work, it would have worked by now.
But they have
and I
to
think
win,
that there is a point to say.
They have to win hearts and minds, and they're not winning
Well, you
hearts.
talk about democracy. Let's talk about hypocrisy. Now, this is a very typical message, okay?
They're interrupting your day and you're talking about it. The first part is trying to get you to talk about it, okay? And if you talk about it enough, some of you will break. Obviously, you are engulfed in selfishness, and the only thing you care about is taking care of your income to support your kids, I guess. And you were wearing a very, I guarantee she's six figures.
This morning, this is Jam on Twitter, speaking for many, many people. Everything these Stop Oil protesters wear or buy or eat was delivered or manufactured using oil. And that includes the glue that they use to stick themselves to the road with. What they're saying is that
we want that to change. We want to have the option of buying products that aren't made from fucking oil, but you guys won't change the system. It could be made from hemp oils. It could be made from vegetable oils. It could be made from algae oils. It can be made from things that decompose and feed plant life and feed the planet instead of killing the planet, you fucking assholes.
It's by definition massively imperfect. I mean, the clothes that you're wearing, to some extent, owe their existence to oil because they were taken in a car or a truck or a van to a shop. You know, there are so many ways that oil impacts on your life as a protester, but you don't acknowledge that.
We're talking about crop failure.
You don't acknowledge that. We're talking about the whole system. We want the whole system to change. We want to be able to buy shit that's hemp made, that's reusable, sustainable, hopefully not fucking, grown and not killed. Preferably not killed, but more like plants. Something we can grow that'll create oxygen and help, create...
By 2030, we're talking about people in this country right now in fuel poverty because of the prices of oil, and you're talking about the clothes that I'm wearing.
No, listen,
but this is so serious.
To be fair, up to now, you've answered questions, but that's a complete avoidance of the question. What about the accusation of hypocrisy, that actually you owe your lifestyle just as much to oil as...
It can change, though, you fucking idiots. It can change. There's other options at this point. We're just refusing to change because the current system doesn't want to change, because that would require capital investments, and they want to keep everything the same because they're currently just breaking it in for cash. Why would they want it to change? That would mess up their investments. They'd make a little less money for a few years. That would suck. They like making tons of money. God, you fucking assholes.
If we want to talk about hypocrisy, look at the government that has pledged for net zero
Still
by
not answering
20.
the
But they
question.
pledged for net zero by 2050, and now they're looking at opening 42 new oil
What about the
fields,
allegations
which will
of
be
hypocrisy?
releasing fossil fuels
What
into
about
the
allegations
2050s.
of
That is a death
What
sentence
about
for my
allegations of
generation and for
hypocrisy?
your children.
Are you going to answer that question, or would you rather not?
How can we be talking about individual scale when we're asking the government to change, so we as individuals no longer have to
Do you
be
accept
reliant
there are
on
levels of
fossil fuels?
Is
hypocrisy
there
in your
any
behaviour?
proof that any of the disruption you have caused has
Oh. Is there any correlation between the disruption and additional, like, they're at the beginning stages. They have to disrupt your fucking day to day, okay? We've been doing this shit for like 20 years now. We're trying to disrupt your shit. And it's not changing? Well, guess what? We're going to keep doing it.
gun policy? I would say no. All it has done is the government has tried to ban protests. It's been completely counterproductive. In the meantime, the collapse...
All it has done is make the government try to ban protesting. Guess what? That's because they're scared and they're sick of it. When the people are protesting in the right way and disrupting things, you're supposed to concede, not ban protesting. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to ban protesting when the people are out and pushing. You're supposed to concede. You're supposed to give a little at least. Give a concession of some fucking sort.
Damage to ordinary people has been huge. We've been through such a trauma the last 2 years. I think there's a question of read the room here. The whole...
Read the room here. We're just so delicate now. I've been sitting in my mansion with my fucking kids and I just want to get rid of them. Don't make me not have to take them to school.
A lot of people have lost their jobs, have lost their businesses, have lost their homes. And yet now, just when we think we're about to climb out of this terrible trauma, now it's like, can I get petrol to go and see my 90-year-old mother? I mean, that's why people are so angry about what you're doing.
Can I see? She brought it back to the mom. I fucking knew it. Can I get petrol to get back to my nutty old mother? Can I get petrol? I need to get to my mother. Mama! Why aren't you living with her? Oh, because you don't actually want to be interrupted because your life, I guarantee she's in some place that you don't have to take care of her. Why aren't you living with her? Because you don't actually care that much? It's better to use as a talking point than it is to actually take care of the situation? Okay.
Because it's selfish, it's narcissistic,
Selfish.
it's ego-driven, and it doesn't change.
You're selfish, narcissistic, and ego-driven. Shadow. Check your shadow. It's right behind you. You can't see it very well. You really got to pay attention.
How do the police treat you on
Look at her fucking face. She is so selfish.
these demonstrations? How have you found their behaviour towards you?
I mean, it's not really a pleasant experience, but I think that's a price worth paying when we're looking at the future. And I do apologise for disruption
But do they
that is
arrest you?
going on. I don't want to be causing disruption to people, but I genuinely feel like we have no other choice. We have done petitions. You know, there's a man on hunger strike outside Parliament. He's been there for 29 days, and he's been ignored by our government. That is peaceful
Could you have been
protest, and
protesting
we've tried.
Downing Street or Parliament rather than ordinary...
But
She just fucking said she's had somebody in front of Congress for days, 29 days on a hunger strike. That's like almost killing themselves. And you're like, well, can't you do...
we have tried that. We sent a letter to the government asking for a conversation. There's someone on hunger strike, like I said. We've done marches. We've sat outside. We've tried to engage, and it doesn't work. And this is so serious. And I ask you, please, to talk about the people of this country deserve to know how serious the future is going to be. And this is minimal disruption for what is coming.
You were arrested, obviously, but released without charge. Can I just very quickly ask you, how long do you protest for before the police eventually arrest you? How long do you sit there
It's just, it depends. It depends the tactics that people use if they're...
That's a stupid fucking misdirection. Like, let's stop talking about the issue. How long do you usually does it take? How long are you sitting in jail for before they let you out without charges? Like, That's misdirection, finishing, trying to get the people to move on.
Locked on or...
But it can be hours, can't it?
Oh, yeah.
And for those who are planning to get away over the Easter holidays, could they expect more disruption, do you think?
Jesus. Easter, are you going to disrupt our Easter holidays? Wow. Just wow.
I think the main message is that the government can stop this. I think people will continue to disrupt and cause action because they are desperate here. The government could stop this if they commit to no new oil project licensing.
We have to say the message from four courts this morning is that things are getting back to normal.
Yes.
There's absolutely no need to rush out and panic buy. That many petrol stations didn't have fuel yesterday, do have it this morning, so things are getting back.
Don't worry, there's fuel. And they have a great public transit system too, by the way. So there's always that opportunity for public transit, but God forbid her snowflake ass, or these snowflake asses. Because if you're on Good Morning Britain, you're probably making $1 million a year, right? A couple £1 million a year, maybe. That single digit, I'm guessing, 1 or 2 million. If their news is anything like our news, which it absolutely is. I don't think it's quite as outrageous. Like, they're not getting like 20 to 30 million a year like our people are, but I bet they're millionaires. I'd put money on it. All right, so yeah, let's do our protest, because that was climate change and protests. The last two segments. So go over to the protests of the weekend. Bam, bye-bye. And of course, Michigan, protests continue after deadly police shooting. And I don't care if this gives me a fucking strike on either of your fucking platforms, because it needs to be shown. This needs to be shown. This is from NBC News. So this is a public news station. Whatever, 3.5 minutes.
More outrage over the police shooting of 26-year-old Patrick Lyoya, killed during an April 4th traffic stop.
Change can't wait for we can't have another person of color die.
Community meetings in Grand Rapids growing heated.
Can't none of us go back to 7-10 days ago and bring our brother back.
More demonstrations expected through the weekend.
Do you trust the investigation being done by the state?
No, I don't.
Video released by police Wednesday shows the traffic stop.
What do you want? The plate doesn't belong in this car.
Turning into a minutes-long scuffle and a struggle over the officer's taser.
Let go of the taser!
Ending with a shot to the back of the head. Lyoya's family calling it an execution.
What was so surprising, pull up the gun and blow up his head. He stayed on top of him. The father said, seemed like he was feeling like he was dead, just to make sure that he's dead.
The unnamed officer involved is a 7-year veteran of the force, now on paid administrative leave as the investigation continues.
What was your initial thought and reaction?
There are some pretty significant red flags.
Seth Soughton is a national use of force expert. He testified during the successful prosecutions of former officers Derek Chauvin and Kim Potter in Minneapolis.
Depending on aspects of the situation that simply are not visible or clear.
You have his ID. You have his fucking ID. Like, why? You have his ID. You know who he is. Just let him fucking run. Give him a bigger ticket, okay? Put out a warrant for his arrest. Don't fucking kill him. Don't execute him, you fucking garbage human beings. Michigan police, fuck you.
Video. The officer's actions might be egregiously unjustified or might be potentially justified. We really need more information about whether the taser was operable as a weapon, whether it could incapacitate or disable the officer.
Questions that the investigation will attempt to answer for a community anxiously awaiting for more.
Justice for Patrick! Justice for Patrick! Justice for Patrick!
Shaq Brewster joins us now from Grand Rapids. Shaq, it looks like you've got a protest behind you. You spoke with Leoya's family. What else did they tell you?
Well, they say they're heartbroken. They're devastated. This is a big loss for them. I spoke to his mother, who said she misses his presence. She misses hearing his voice. His dad said he was supposed to be the soldier of the family. This is a family that came to the United States in 2014, fleeing violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they didn't expect to see what they saw on that tape. But if you listen to one message, they want one thing to be abundantly clear, and they want the officer who shot and killed their son to be identified publicly. They want that officer to be fired, and they want that officer to be prosecuted. And that is the same message that you're hearing from many of the protesters that come out. This is the third night of protests we're seeing here in Grand Rapids, and you hear that constant message.
Grand Rapids and Detroit have had too many of this shit. And yeah, it's, you guys are, it's, if I hear fucking property, if I hear fucking protests or disrupting somebody's lives, I'm going to snap.
They want accountability, and for the family, again, that's the officer being identified, fired, and prosecuted.
Yes. Fired, prosecuted, never allowed to be a police officer again. That is a garbage human. Garbage human. Oh, fuck's sakes. Alright, protests. Continue. Makes me sick to my stomach. I'm kind of a little bit rattled. Alright.
I understand that I carry my
This one is Mexican truckers protest Texas Governor Abbott's security measures at border. From the 13th, 5 days ago. This is NBC News again. Ooh, look at that. Two main news networks giving us protest calls.
At one of the busiest trade ports at the Texas-Mexico border.
Estamos viendo que no tenemos apoyo de nadie. Sin comida, sin agua.
No food, no water, no bathroom.
Y la mera verdad,
and honestly, that's why the drivers closed the path.
Cerraron el paso. For 3 days, truckers carrying fresh produce and other cargo have been protesting, stuck at a standstill at the Far Reynosa International Bridge near McAllen, Texas. Some now waiting as long as 12 hours to enter the country.
They're idling at $5
protesting stuck at a standstill.
Well, it's really hurting us a lot.
The protests coming after a new order by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is now requiring state troopers to inspect trucks coming into Texas, a second checkpoint, following the usual inspection by U.S. Custom and Border officials.
Cartels use vehicles, many of them dangerous commercial trucks, to smuggle immigrants, deadly fentanyl, and other illegal cargo into Texas.
Just a week ago, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers...
So they don't trust the feds?
It's really hurting us a lot.
Sorry, fucking
the protest
meant to pause that.
Commercial trucks to smuggle immigrants, deadly fentanyl.
He doesn't trust the feds, so he's gonna have the state boys do it too. That's some partisan bullshit right there, right?
And other illegal cargo into Texas.
Just a week ago, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers seized over $13 million in narcotics at the Far Bridge inside a commercial truck coming from Mexico. But critics argue the impact goes far beyond these safety measures. Today, the White House adding pressure. Press Secretary Jen Psaki condemning Abbott's orders in a statement calling them redundant, that the disruptions to trade are impacting jobs and raising prices for families in Texas and across the country. Business owners in Texas now warning shoppers should expect food shortages in the next few days.
Putting this inspection and creating this disruptive to the supply chain is not the correct answer.
Abbott at a presser today announcing that he will stop the measures at the port of entry with Nuevo Leon, Mexico, after he reached an agreement with the local governor to ramp up border security on the Mexican side.
The bridge from Nuevo Leon and Texas will return to normal, effective immediately, right now.
But Abbott doubling down on all other ports of entry. Till then, the truck lines at this stop are still hours long. Vaughn Hilliard, NBC News.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by...
Did he say YouTube channel condescendingly? Kind of sounded like it. At least in my, it sounded like it to me at least. Condescending
Do
bastard.
you experience anxiety in social or group settings?
Every fucking day. You wait, hold on a second. I want to watch the commercial again. Can I watch the commercial again? No. Do you have anxiety in group settings? Oh my god, I have to look into that. That is so funny. Who doesn't get anxiety in group settings sometimes? Like isn't that one of those like kind of like ballpark, like everybody gets it kind of now and then? Like, do you have a hard time sleeping sometimes? Do you get sore? Achy once in a while? Like, yeah, everybody does. Fuck. uh
Well, of course, we keep a very close eye on the situation in KZN. Also, a lot of international news. We need to keep a very close eye on. Russia is not happy. The Kremlin has sent a note of protest to all countries supplying Ukraine with weapons as the standoff between the two warring countries is continuing. Russia also deciding to label Kremlin critic, political analyst Ekaterina Skulman as a foreign agent. Very, very angry words coming out of the Kremlin. ENCA correspondent Julia Chapman joining us from Moscow now. Hello to you, Julia. Good to have you on ENCA. And today, just give me the background. Why is the Kremlin so upset and sending notes of irritation?
Well, this was first reported by the Washington Post, which said that the Russian Foreign Ministry had issued this protest note not only to Washington, but to all of the capitals that have been sending military aid to Ukraine. That was then confirmed by the Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova, although she didn't give any details on the content of that note. What we understand from the Washington Post is that it said that it was calling on the US and its allies to stop its irresponsible militarization of Ukraine, as the Foreign Ministry put it, predicting unpredictable consequences to come. Certainly the West has been giving many weapons to Ukraine. They've been stepping up their military assistance in recent weeks. Just this week, the United States announced that it would be giving a further $800 million in military equipment to Kiev. Of course, we've been hearing from Ukrainian officials that they say that's still not enough, but from Moscow's perspective, it's far too much, and Moscow has been accusing the West of pumping Ukraine with weapons and stoking the tensions even further. But the US says it's not going to change its course because of this note of protest. It insists that its aid is necessary because of Russian aggression.
And as far as the relations between Russia and the Western governments at the moment, we know obviously not much communication between Ukraine and Russia. What is Moscow's stance on how the West is handling this? Are there at least communication lines open?
There are fewer than ever because we have been seeing an unprecedented expulsion of Russian diplomats from European capitals. Hundreds of Russian diplomats have been kicked out and sent home in recent weeks. Many European nations saying that this is all to do with the situation in Ukraine, directly linking those expulsions. We're also learning in the last few hours Russia has issued a travel ban on many British officials, including UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, the Defence Secretary, most of the British cabinet. So, of course, that is more of a symbolic move, but it is really limiting the channels of communication between Moscow and the West. That said, there are still several European leaders who are in regular phone contact with President Vladimir Putin. Emmanuel Macron, himself running for re-election at the moment, has been perhaps the most frequent caller to the Kremlin, still trying to urge Russian President Vladimir Putin to de-escalate the situation in Ukraine, but so far to no avail.
And so far as well, there seems to be mixed messages, conflicting reports regarding the Russian flagship that was allegedly sunk as a result of a Ukrainian missile that has caused some confusion. Do you have any idea what the latest is on that?
So under Russian law, I can only give you Moscow's version of events, but this is what it is. They say that...
Under Russian law, I can only give you Moscow's version of events. That sounds sus. A little sus.
On Friday, there was a fire on board the Moskva, which led to ammunition being detonated on board. It says that the entire crew was evacuated. It later confirmed that the ship was being towed back to a port. It didn't specify which one, but ordinarily the Moskva has been docked at the Sevastopol port on Russian-annexed Crimea. But then later that day, Russia announced that the ship had in fact sunk. Now, there has been no indication as to what has happened to the crew. There were no pictures on Russian state media of them coming back onto dry land, victorious and safe. So there is still a huge amount of uncertainty, but that is what the Russian version of events is so far.
The Russian version of events. So thank you for clarifying that several times. Definitely doesn't add any allure of suspect to the conversation. Oh, freaking. Alright. They're not talking about protests a whole lot. This is supposed to be about protests. Goodbye. Goodbye. I think I have the next one where I want it. Hello? Yep. Alright. Watch this on speed.
When people look at films that are...
So we'll watch this on much, much faster. But this was the protests against the far-right election. they're trying to go against the far right. They're anti-far right. I don't understand exactly what they're protesting here, but I do know that the French like to protest, and I do know that this protest got a little out of hand. I like going to the raw footage over the let's go to this fucking. Alright, 2x speed. I like going to the raw footage over the edits from, you know, the 2-3 minute edits that mainstream media gives you. This is from The Independent. It's a 2-hour live stream that they did. Yeah, I feel like the live streams give you a little better feel of what happens. Where did I actually want to start this at? 46. Oh, we're at 46. Okay. So you can see it right here. Peaceful protest for the day. They're just trying to, you know, bring attention to the scariness of Le Pen. If we go forward a little bit, shit gets a little scary. Alright, where is the... So they start getting a little more busy, And, if you can see up front now, the police have blockaded them. And so, when police blockade you, always good things happen. Always, always, always. So yeah, hour 15 into this guy's, they got the police blockade and the battle. The constant pushing back and forth of police to civilians. Which again, always a good thing. You know, definitely know that you're doing well when that situation starts. Alright, so yeah, massive group of people, police blocking them, and they're not pressing yet, but there's a lot of police. They're building their groups. And now you can see people running away, moving away. I believe they've tear gassed them. Mildly tear gassed them to start. And so people are covering their faces, their eyes, and running away. So yep, that's how we handle protests against a political party. We tear gas them. Standard procedure in the Western world. Not allowed to use tear gas on another country, but you can use tear gas on your own people. to break up protests. All right, this one is for violence at Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque as protesters clash with Israeli police riot.
Palestinians gathered at the Al-Aqsa Mosque for dawn prayers during the month of Ramadan. TV footage shows Palestinians throwing rocks outside the mosque and Israeli forces firing tear gas and stun grenades. Palestinians then barricaded themselves inside Al-Aqsa before police raided the mosque to arrest many inside. Israeli forces rarely enter the mosque itself, which Palestinians consider a provocation.
They fired rubber bullets inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. They were beating everyone, even the paramedics.
The Red Cross says most of those wounded were hit by rubber bullets and stun grenades or beaten with police batons. Palestinians accuse Israeli forces of hindering access to ambulances.
We condemn this. People all over the world saw it on their screens. The barbarism is used by the occupation to suppress the safe worshippers who came to attend morning prayer.
The clashes come at a sensitive time. Ramadan this year coincides with the Jewish Passover and, of course, Easter. Al-Aqsa Mosque is on a site holy to Jews as well as Muslims. But tensions were already high after a recent...
I'm just doing Elon's interview. I didn't know there was more big news. I was checking out his interview from a few days ago and a couple clips related to him, but I did not know he had more big news. That was the whole second half of my show is Elon, so I will look into that while we get to the second half.
8 killings. Israeli police last week raided a West Bank town and shot 3 people dead as they searched for those behind recent attacks. Days before, a Palestinian gunman opened fire at a bar in Tel Aviv, killing 3 Israelis. That and other Palestinian attacks have killed more than a dozen people in recent weeks and stoked the tensions in Jerusalem.
We're working to calm things on Temple Mount and throughout Israel. At the same time, we're prepared for any scenario.
Hours after the clashes, the mosque was reopened and thousands were allowed in to midday prayers. Ann Barker, ABC News.
I'm not seeing anything. I will be Elon bashing in a little bit, but I don't see what that is. All right, go ahead. Go next.
Claire, this is in The Guardian, the climate protest.
Climate protests. Okay. Stop disputing our lives. Cleo Pearson slams Extinction Rebellion over London protests. Ooh, let's hear this one, Great Britain.
Because obviously there's more and more stuff going on in London at the moment, which a lot of people are going to say, well, it's London, we don't care. But nevertheless, it's significant.
It is significant, and you've got Extinction Rebellion activists blocking bridges in London, I think Vauxhall Bridge, Westminster Bridge and Blackfriars Bridge, protesting over climate change, which, you know, is their right to a peaceful protest. But when it stops people going about their daily lives, it stops, especially on Westminster Bridge, that's one of the main routes into St Thomas's Hospital.
They always talk about fucking hospitals, don't they? They always got to make like you're risking people's lives. There's 1,000 hospitals in London, medical centers, facilities, everywhere in London. Every community has several.
You know, I'm really against this kind of thing. Have a peaceful protest all you like. Please don't disrupt other people's lives.
If you if you're not disruptors, no one's going to listen to you.
But you can be disruptive. You can go and be disruptive elsewhere. You can go and actually
Elsewhere?
campaign outside the buildings which hold that power. Why block?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, they don't get it, man. They don't get it. That's for fucking sure. Alright, I get YouTube back in here so I can see when I get taken down. Elon Mush. I like how I put that on YouTube.
Bridge, which is going to affect normal people who don't have
Because it gets us
rights.
talking about it. We wouldn't really be talking about it if they just did it outside an office block.
Is that the problem, though, is that we are giving them all that airtime? I don't think gluing yourself to, one of the departments in London or an oil company's reception, well, how is that going to help? It's actually just going to make people angry and turn against them. So I just think it's a bit counterproductive.
They're already against them. The people that are angry and against them are already against them. So that's a non-argument. Non-argument.
Stream 85 plus channels and save up to $500 a year.
There's some really selfish people against the issues here. I'm so surprised. All right. The national anthem in Sri Lanka. They are still protesting in Sri Lanka, everyone. This was from 2 days ago. Still protesting in Sri Lanka. They've been arrested. They've had police violence against them. They're out there every day protesting against their corrupt government. And I think they're literally just protesting like fuel prices, food prices, and their corrupt government. That's that general of a protest. And they're out there singing their national anthem. Like, they haven't given up on national pride. They just want things to change for the better. Because changing for the better doesn't necessarily mean you don't like your country. You just want things to change for the better. It's called progress. We move forward as a society. With evolution and innovation comes the need for change. Jesus Christ. Good luck to the people in Sri Lanka. I'm glad you guys are still protesting, pushing powerful. They have faced a lot of adversity in these few weeks of protests. I've been talking about them for 3-4 weeks now. Yeah, they have faced a lot of adversity. I'm glad they're still pushing hard. Good to them. All right, let's move on for the show. We are going to kind of slowly transition our way into, what do we got here? So we have Ukraine and Russia, and then we're going to move into Elon Musk. So first Ukraine and Russia, and then Elon Musk as we move into our end of the night, second half of the night here. Almost second half. About second half. All right, almost.
The killing of civilians in a suburb of the Ukrainian capital, calling for new sanctions and investigations of alleged war crimes as outrage grew. Russian forces withdrawal from the Kiev region, which a NATO leader framed Sunday as a chance for Moscow to regroup rather than a true retreat, has further revealed the devastation wrought by the Russian invasion. Video verified by the Washington Post showed bodies on the streets in Bucha, a suburb northwest of Kiev, while journalists with the Post and other news organizations found some corpses whose hands had been bound. Ukraine's prosecutors general said a task force has found more than 400 bodies of civilians in the Kiev region. Personally, Ron, I take everything kind of with a grain of salt because there's propaganda on both sides. However, I don't.
Oh, yeah, this is a 14-minute clip with Jordan Sheridan, who's a fine journalist. Again, when he's doing journalism, he's fine. You don't have to like everything he says. You don't have to agree with everything he says. I personally don't. But that's what makes people great. But he does great journalism on, actual problems in America. And this segment looked good because these two people are both fantastic.
I think Ukrainian forces slaughtered Ukrainians in this case. So I do, I do believe Russia has been killing innocent civilians there. But all of this, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. I assume you don't. It's a horrendous war. The Ukrainians have lost a lot of lives. Russian soldiers, a lot of Russian soldiers have died, more than I think Putin has expected to die. But all these things that are happening are now building up the chorus from subtly networks like MSNBC pushing for direct NATO and U.S. involvement to anchors now just directly calling for U.S. NATO involvement. Colin, if we could start, Ali Velshi, who's an MSNBC anchor.
The scale is moving. The scale is moving. And then pretty soon we're just going to start saying nuclear, kill everyone. But yeah, the pro-war scale is tipping, at least on mainstream media. Now, the question do people start going, hell yeah, let's fight Russia? Or do we start saying, let's get out and protest some anti-war, and then have that protest turn into a general strike, then have that general strike turn into some actual fucking change? I'm just trying to be optimistic. I don't think it'll really happen either.
He tweeted, "The turning point for the West and NATO will come when the sun rises over Kyiv on Sunday and the war crimes against civilian non-combatants becomes visible to all. There's no more time for prevarication. If never again means anything, then this is the time to act." So there is kind of like the appetizer to the main meal. Aaron Mate responded, "How do you propose the West and NATO act? What are you calling for?" And he says, straight up, direct military involvement. So
yeah, I like how we're all kind of patting him on the back for at least being honest. We're just like, well, he's being honest. He wants to instigate World War III. At least he's being honest about it.
Exactly. And you took the words out of my mouth because I tweeted, at least Ali Velshi is dropping the veil and openly stating what MSNBC has been pushing all along. So I'm flattered he has the time on the ground in Ukraine to respond to me. But I had said this in response to a separate Twitter user. I think the U.S. has done a lot via weapons, intel, and troop deployment in neighboring countries. War is an awful thing, but World War III would be way worse than what we are seeing now. NATO, U.S. troops in Ukraine would start a world war with a major nuclear power. So Ali Velshi took a break from responding to others. He responded to me. A number of experts with whom I've spoken say that that conclusion may not be obvious. I love it. May not be obvious because physically defending Ukraine would not pose an existential threat to Russia. Feel free to watch my segments from this morning, all of which I've posted. I didn't have the chance to watch this segment.
Shucks.
Shucks. So I responded. He, meaning Putin, has consistently said NATO on his doorstep is a number one concern. I think your experts are fairly reckless to basically say, trust us that the U.S. and NATO in Ukraine won't pose existential threat when that is what Putin has consistently pounded for years. I followed up. There's also a lot of experts who spoke of weapons of mass destruction, arming Syrian rebels, which included al-Qaeda, sticking it out in Afghanistan, and on and on. I, for one, don't trust anyone so sure poking the bear of a nuclear power on its doorstep is worth the risk. And he responded, at least he has good manners. I hear you and appreciate your perspective. Ron, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically his way of being like, yeah, I don't want to engage this any further. I mean, it was a polite response. Okay. This is one of those things where people like basically anyone in the corporate media. I mean, we don't even have to single out Ali Velshi, but they have a very, very rigid perspective and a very, very rigid frame of conversation. And that frame of conversation is Putin's a madman. This was entirely unprovoked. And if anyone says anything critical of U.S. imperialism or NATO imperialism or neo-Nazis in Ukraine or anything like that. It means you're fine with everything Russia is doing. And kind of like having that sort of tribal, pro-imperialist, pro-U.S. Warmongering perspective, that's an easy thing to do. And that's going to keep the gravy train of cable news, which gets a lot of its funding from weapons manufacturers, that's going to keep that rolling. What's a hard thing to do? Well, the hard thing is to do is the thing that you're doing, the thing that Aaron Mate's doing, the thing that I do, the thing that, other people try to do, where we recognize the complexity of the situation. I'm not okay with what Putin's doing. I'm not okay with that in any way, shape, or form. You know who else isn't okay with that? Just as a side note, a lot of the Russian people. There's a lot of anti-war protests going on in Russia right now. Corporate media is not going to show you that, are they? No, they're not, because that humanizes more of the folks involved with this, and they don't want that. But you know what I'm also not okay with? I'm not okay with U.S. imperialism. I'm not okay with the fact that the U.S. is using Ukraine as a pawn and has been instigating this for 8 years and counting. I'm not okay with that either. I'm not okay with armed neo-Nazis in Ukraine. I'm not okay with that. So it's like, at the end of the day, there are no good guys in this scenario, except for, who the good guys are, Jordan? The people in Ukraine who are going through a lot of terrible things right now. And my heart goes out to them. The people in Russia who are protesting what their government is doing. The people from Russia in the United States that are facing a bunch of xenophobic nonsense because of all this stuff. Those are the good guys in this situation. Who are the bad guys in this situation? Well, the imperialists, whether they're U.S. imperialists, NATO imperialists, militants in Ukraine, or Putin himself. Recognizing the complexity of that situation, that's a lot harder than sort of picking a warmongering tribe like the corporate media will do and always has. Why? Because that's their gravy train, baby. When you turn on cable news and you see commercials for defense industries and stuff like that, why do you think that is? Do you think the average person is in a market for a new tank? No, they're not. They're buying favorable coverage. And it's been this way since at least the 60s. There's been study after study done on it. We don't have an anti-war media, at least not at the corporate level in the United States. You got to go to the indie world to find that stuff.
I think everything you said is right. And the truth is, there's another component as far as the media. The media, I'm talking CNN, MSNBC, their ratings have been in collapse since Trump left the stage. Well, the war in Russia and Ukraine, even in periods where I don't want to say doldrums, because there's been constant attacks, but it's not as new. It's not as volatile every day. They've continued covering 24/7 because their ratings have gone up. And the majority of their audience, no disrespect to my older viewers, not every older person is, falls into this Cold War hysteria. A lot of MSNBC, CNN, definitely Fox News audience came up in their middle-aged years in the 1980s, Cold War hysteria. So they're glued to their TV because they have been indoctrinated. Again, Putin is absolutely brutally invading another country, killing innocents. I don't condone that. But at the same time, it's not wrong to point out that promises were made to Russia when the Soviet Union collapsed, and they have been completely, blatantly disregarded in regards to NATO expansion not moving eastward. But specifically on this, and Ali Velshi, he's not the worst of them. He's not, Dan Rather or Brian Williams faking his Iraq helicopter rides and whatever else.
He's dodging enemy fire right now. Brian Williams is
right.
He's out there right now with his new podcast, Dodging Enemy Fire. It's probably going to drop in a couple weeks. I'm excited.
Right. But I didn't have enough Twitter time to point out, hey, what other experts said to get involved? The generals who were literally trying to trick President John F. Kennedy into invading Cuba. And that's why the Bay of Pigs was so disastrous, because they left out that tiny detail to JFK. Oh, yeah, we're going to have American air support for this. So Kennedy fired, CIA Director Alan Dulles and others. But to me, the problem here is Ali Velshi, as a journalist, you're supposed to have a good bullshit detector. The experts you're interviewing have reason to want to escalate war with Russia. Some of them are on the board of directors of security firms, defense contractors. Others are truly simply think they're really, really smarter and for certain know that, oh no, Putin's bluffing. He would never use nuclear weapons. Well, there's been reports that from Putin experts that his behavior has changed and possibly his mental status. So it's just amazing to me. You didn't learn from the Iraq War. You didn't learn from Afghanistan. And you're quoting to me, MSNBC anchor, well, experts think it wouldn't necessarily, just protecting Ukraine wouldn't be deemed by Putin as a direct threat. I mean, how do you really believe that?
I don't know if they do, to tell you the truth, because I think it's like, yeah, you're saying, oh, that they're allowed, they should have a good bullshit detector. You're absolutely 100% right. But, you know, they're allowed to have a good bullshit detector when it's permissible. And it's not permissible when it comes to the agenda of U.S. warmongering and imperialism. You can just look at all the Pentagon budgets. You can look at the economy of war that we've been building for many years and counting. Smedley
Can't be anti-war. Anti-war is the worst thing it can be.
Butler wrote the book many, many years ago that war is a racket. So it's not okay to have the right bullshit detector on there. That's why everybody who got the Iraq war right got fired from positions in the corporate media, and everyone who got it brutally wrong faced no consequence whatsoever, or in other cases, they even got promotions for crying out loud. That's a systemic thing. It's not like every single time they're like, we could trust them this time. Oh, wait, they fooled us again. It's a systemic thing. And I would argue it's very, very deliberate.
Right. And lastly on this, I mean, Ron, we're also got to remember, yes, right now we have to think first and foremost about the Ukrainian civilians who are just completely unnecessarily losing their lives. It's a shame. We'll be releasing footage that we got from a freelancer of wounded soldiers and things like that. But also, what about American soldiers? We're going to send American soldiers to Ukraine, which, I don't know, Russia is allies with Syria, with China, with other countries. That could make Iraq look like child's play if we send American soldiers, NATO soldiers to Ukraine, because a lot of these people didn't actually think Putin was going to invade Ukraine, or it would be a, you know, quarter of Ukraine invasion or a half invasion. So to me, do we want, it's bad now, but they don't seem to understand that it could be a lot worse for American soldiers, who the Republicans and Democrats, frankly, pretend to care so much about, until they actually soldiers speak out against their bullshit wars that have disabled them and things like that. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of concern about American soldiers coming from the so-called experts talking to MSNBC anchors.
Absolutely. There's no concern about that. And I want to add to that, too. You know, I've been saying for the past couple of months now, yeah, my heart goes out to what the people in Ukraine are going through big time. But you know what else? My heart also goes out to the people of Somalia, the people of Syria, the people of Yemen. These are all other victims of the U.S. war machine who have been bombed as of recent. So you really need to kind of keep your eye on the prize of what the big problem is and who the real bad guy is. And the bad guy is imperialism around the world. That doesn't mean Russia's an innocent actor. Of course they're not. But you know what? I'm not going to in any way downplay the U.S. involvement in this. And once again, we are the shining bad guy on the hill. We are the war machine because we have a by-the-book empire. Down to the whole thing of, guess what? People in the United States are facing a declining quality of life. We saw it in its most bare assessment recently, where Joe Biden said, hey, no more funding for COVID, no more funding for testing. We got to put money into the war machine, baby. What do you call that? You call that an empire. What happens to every empire in human history? It falls. We ain't going to be any different. And with the way we're behaving, it freaking needs to happen. It's up to us to determine how brutal or not brutal it's going to be, or at least to do everything we can.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Quo's daily
live streams from mostly just him, but there's a few other people. Right on. Okay, that was the first Ukraine. This is the second. Press News 2055. That's close enough. And then 46. All right. We got a couple segments more on Ukraine before we get into the build up to Elon Musk. Welcome to the second half of the show, everybody. I should probably pack a bowl, huh? I'll pack a bowl when we get some more joiners. Usually Sunday's my best show. Everybody's being Easter Sunday, not my best show. Typically Sundays are when I get my most joiners, and I have a very quiet audience tonight, so we'll see if some people join late because of Easter. See if anybody joins at all because of Easter. We'll see. But I have a small couple clips here on Ukraine to tie into that last one before we move on to the Elon buildup. So,
way to obfuscate
Mint Press
about
News.
what their sources of funding are and also where their loyalties may lie. So if you could just give us a bit of information about the Atlantic Council, please.
Yeah, sure. In short, the Atlantic Council is the brains behind NATO. It is NATO's semi-official think tank. Of course, the A in NATO stands for Atlantic, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the Atlantic Council is staffed by former NATO generals or high-ranking officers directly funded by NATO, produces policy reports suggesting what NATO should do in certain areas. Should it expand here? Should it spend more money here? And when you look at the board of directors of the Atlantic Council, it becomes absolutely clear what this organization is. So, for instance, on their board include people like Henry Kissinger, Bush-era apparatchiks like Condoleezza Rice. Colin Powell was on there until he died recently. Robert Gates, the Secretary of Defense. There's also multiple very high-ranking US generals on there. For instance, General Wesley Clark, who you mentioned previously. Mad Dog Mattis is on there. There's a General Petraeus. Also on there are no fewer than 7 former CIA directors as well. And there's also a spattering of big business leaders and also European government leaders as well. So in short, the Atlantic Council is basically the collective brains of the national security states of European and North American nations. This is pretty worrying because they not only have put out some of the most farcical and ludicrous reports about Russia and China over the last 5 or 6 years, which have really provided the basis for the sort of ramping up of tensions against those two countries. The Atlantic Council famously wrote a series of reports called the Kremlin's Trojan Horses, in which they attacked pretty much every non-centrist political movement, whether it's right-wing or left-wing in Europe, and claiming that they were secretly either in the pay of Vladimir Putin or doing his bidding. So, for instance, Labour under Corbyn was tarred like that. So was UKIP under Nigel Farage. In Spain, Podemos was tarred like that, and so was Vox. In Greece, the left-wing Syriza party was labelled as the Kremlin Trojan horse, as was the right-wing Golden Dawn party. So we've got this situation where the Atlantic Council is really pumping.
Everybody's using the Russians as their Trojan, as their enemy. They're, that party's aligned with Russia. That party's aligned with Russia. It's this fucking watchdog bullshit that we've been using since, it's gaslighting bullshit that we've been using since Napoleon, the Italian Napoleon, build up in French army to crush Russia.
An awful lot of highly dubious assertions going on. And yet, the Atlantic Council itself has one of the most important organizations in deciding what we see in our news feeds day after day. The Atlantic Council has partnered with Twitter in the past and advised it on what accounts to promote and what sources of information it should suppress. But perhaps most importantly, it's got a formal partnership with Facebook in which it helps curate the news feeds of nearly 3 billion people worldwide. And as I said, when an organization like this, which has got all of these heads of state and national security leaders on its board, when this is the organization that is deciding what people see in their news feeds, and let's remember, 40% of Americans use Facebook primarily for news. This means that we basically have a system of worldwide state censorship, but nobody seems to really know what's going on. We still think of the internet as this more or less free place where the free flow of ideas isn't really hampered very much. But in fact, what we've seen over the last few years is governments around the world really taking an interest in actively regulating what people see and hear online. And the Atlantic Council has been an absolutely key part of that.
Absolutely.
Iraq or Afghanistan.
All right, I think it's 42 minutes here. The next segment, I wanted to watch those.
Which really shows just how ignorant he is, because of course Iraq was the cradle of civilization, the incredible civilizations like the Sumerians and the Akkadians and the Babylonians, and all of this was really like the basis of modern society. But it's also clearly, if you think about it, it's actually like a sly dig at the Ukrainians as well, because he says they're only relatively civilized, you know? They are still Slavs, but at least they're, you know, white passing. So perhaps they're relatively civilized. And I think it really shows that despite the fact that a lot of the 19th century views on race and racial hierarchy have gone out of fashion, at least in the way that we're not really supposed to talk about them, they are still actually ingrained in our society. And this sort of media coverage is a great way of showing that to be the case.
You also point out in one of your pieces, Alan, the way in which at the outset of the US invasion of Afghanistan, you know, 20-year war, the war on terror, which entailed the average of 46 bombs dropped per day for 20 years by the US military, that you even had the chairman of CNN sending a memo to CNN's staff advising essentially that they downplay the suffering of Afghans. Could you expand a bit on that, please, Alan?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ultimately, I think this episode in Ukraine, as terrible as it is, we can learn some things from it. And one of the things that we can learn is that if media wanted to do their job and wanted to be anti-war and wanted to actually stop atrocities, they could do this all the time. And in fact, that is a choice that they're making every day, not to show the victims of British bombs or American bombs, wherever they fall, whether that's in Iraq or Pakistan or Yemen or Libya or wherever it is. If these reporters actually went to the hospitals in those countries and saw what was going on there, like they're doing in Kiev and Kharkiv and Odessa right now, that there would quite possibly be a revolution in our countries overnight, as people would simply absolutely refuse to be part of a system that bombs millions of people around the world globally every year. And so ultimately, media is a really powerful force for change in our society. But ultimately, the people at the top who actually control these news organizations know that. And that memo that you quoted from the head of CNN, sending it out at the start of the Afghan war, which said it, quote, seems perverse to focus too much on the casualties or hardship in Afghanistan, unquote, really shows that to be the case. These are pro-war outlets that know their role, and their role is ultimately to support empire and support the views of the people at the very top of society. And that's why people call media outlets the prime vehicle for manufacturing public consent for the policies of the elite, which are very often, in fact, most of the time, the strict opposite of the interests of most of us at the bottom.
I mean, just to sort of juxtapose it all to what has happened across these years in Yemen, we are talking about the world's largest and most desperate humanitarian crisis. You know, the poorest people in the world being bombed by the richest states in the region who are backed by some of the richest countries in the world. You know, nearly a third of all of the strikes have hit civilian targets. You've got 10 million people there facing famine. You've got 80% of the population requiring humanitarian assistance, and 80% of the population of Yemen is 24 million people. You know, the
Jesus.
rates of acute malnutrition of children under 5 are the highest ever recorded in human history. It's been estimated that 98,000 children under the age of 5 in Yemen are at risk of dying without urgent treatment. You've got 250,000 pregnant or breastfeeding women also at risk of dying without urgent treatment in Yemen. I mean, and Save the Children, a nice, respectable charity, estimated that for every one child killed by bombs and bullets in Yemen, dozens are starving to death. And that's because of the policy of blockade that we have seen at the port of Hodeidah and in other places. You know, and it's, you know, a fact that starvation is considered a war crime. You know, the depriving of civilians of objects which are indispensable to their survival. And we've seen that play out on an a very widespread industrial scale in Yemen, actually. And across this time, we've seen Britain's prize arms company, which the royal family has so dutifully served, BAE Systems, selling over £15 billion worth of arms to Saudi during the bombing of Yemen. We also know that you've had literally UK-made fighter jets driven by pilots who have been trained by the UK, dropping UK-made bombs. We were told that there were no UK personnel on the ground in Yemen, but actually the Daily Mail revealed that there were special forces soldiers wounded there, clearly making it apparent that there is British involvement on the ground. Also, a BAE Systems worker said that if it wasn't for BAE Systems involvement in maintenance of the jets and other things, then within 7 to 14 days, there wouldn't be a jet in the sky. You know, we have seen those airstrikes hit markets, funerals, weddings, detention facilities, civilian boats, and even medical facilities. It's believed that the farms in Yemen have been bombed over 1,000 times. And, you know, literally only 49% of the public in Britain even know that the war in Yemen is happening. Now, you have argued that the United States is a quote-unquote direct participant in the violence in Yemen. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty defensible statement, frankly. Since the war in Yemen started, the United States, according to data that I...
Okay, let's move on to... Let's get going into Jank. We got 2 hours in. I'm only halfway through. Oh, we need to move on to Elon or else I won't get there. So we're going to slowly move on to Elon. So we're going to talk about... Harlan's Media has Jank angry at CPC ignoring Nina Turner, shows Jimmy Dore was right about Democrats. And then we're going to move on to Jimmy Dore talking about Elon, and then we're going to move on to the Elon interview.
Progressive Caucus, as I talked about on last night's live stream, decided to give its endorsement to all the incumbents. Wow, it seems like Progressive forgot how the DCCC did everything it could to derail them, especially during the 2016, 2018, and 2020 elections. Now the Congressional Progressive Caucus has fallen in line with the Democratic Party, and nothing fundamentally changed. Democratic Party basically owns the progressives now. Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, our revolution. You're not going to do anything or change anything. Jimmy Dore was right. There's no way you can reform the Democratic Party. So here's this tweet from Fat Tony. I mean, Cenk Uygur. I'm sorry. Sorry. I apologize. Cenk Uygur tweeted this out. In order to undo the damage done by the ridiculous, corrupt, and elitist position of U.S. progressives, his new PAC, Rebellion PAC, whatever happened to Wolfpack, Cenk, is going to enter the race to help Nina Turner. Progressive caucus endorsement will be the most counterproductive ever. Help us win this race. HelpTheRebellion.com. Oh my God, Janky. I thought you said we could trust the likes of Pramila Jayapal. I thought you said we could trust these people. I thought you said that, you know, we just got to give them time, keep our powder dry, and then we'll do something about Medicare for All. Turns out Jimmy Dore's forced to vote for Medicare for All was right. Turns out the March for Medicare for All was right. We can't rely on these jag-off politicians.
No, we cannot.
I just want to read a few short excerpts from this article. Again, it's from TYT. I'll keep it short, simple, and brief because I feel that it would be violence. It would be violence of the highest order. To reread this again. But here's a few short excerpts. Phase, you can just show people a link. No need to follow along, folks, but hang on. Here we go. Yesterday's endorsement of Representative Shontel Brown, Democrat, Ohio, over rival Nina Turner by the Congressional Progressive Caucus PAC didn't just spark a progressive uproar. It may have come without Turner even getting a chance to make her case. Oh no, Janky. It's also raising questions about CPC's strategy, leadership, and commitment to progressive fighters. Brown's incumbency appears to have been the determining factor in the endorsement. Turner's allies, however, now argue that this approach threatens to damage the CPC's progressive image, influence, and credibility. Hey, audience, let's have democracy in the chat. Type 1 if you have confidence and high hope in the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Type 2 if you know that they're just corporate Democrats that are just waiting in wings just to replace the senile bats of Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein. And don't worry, again, as we continue on with the story, once again, Jimmy Dore has been proven right, and so has everyone else in independent media, that the corporate Democrats were always going to sell out. Anyways, continuing on. So, again, who is the head of the Congressional Progressive Caucus? Why, none other than the honorable, oh so kind, oh so wonderful Representative Pramila Jayapal. You know, the same person who went on national TV and said that she had trust in Manchin to vote for Build Back Better. Now, again, Build Back Better was a corrupt bill anyways. Build Back Better was not going to help out working class citizens. Remember, it started from $7 trillion to $1.75 trillion, and now it's nothing.
Watered down bullshit that got more and more watered down as they went, to the point where it wasn't even a fucking, yeah.
It's nothing. It's a nothing burger. Always have been, always will be. So, again, as I mentioned on last night's live stream, how there was a lot of, you know, sighs and, oh, I wish we could endorse Nina Turner, but none of her colleagues.
Just a few questions.
Of course we're going to get that. Perfect time for a break. Kira Hellfire. Nice name. Kira Hellfire. Welcome to the show. Usually when I get a new follow, I try to take a hit. We are working on the second half of the show, working up to the Elon Musk section, so perfect time for me to take a hit. Thank you for the follow. Gonna take a small bowl break here while we get into the second half of the show. Moving on to Elon slowly but surely. First, moving into Jimmy.
The squad have stepped forward, which is pretty pathetic when you think about it.
Cheers.
Good thing I got to this part right here. So, Cenk Uygur, who has given Turner a platform on TYT, not once but twice, so probably be coming back to that position pretty soon, where he's both the host and CEO, is also the founder of Rebellion PAC, which endorsed Turner, Uygur said. Would anyone like to debate whether Nina Turner or Chantal Brown is more progressive? Of course not! Way to do it, Cenky. Because Nina would win 100-0. Rebellion PAC.
Yeah, but they're both corporate owned a little bit. Nina's not exactly a pure progressive. I wish she was. She has great charisma. She has great. I mean, she's very intelligent. She plays the game. I just wish she was a little more pure of cause. I think she's got a little bit of corporate sponsorship, but she's not completely grassroots by any means.
Executive Director Brianna Wu said, our research shows that $15 minimum wage, not high enough anymore, is by far the most salient issue in the district. So if you look at Brown's public statements on the issue and then Turner's public statements, the endorsement truly leaves me scratching my head. Well, gee, stop scratching your head. You'll realize that the corporate Democrats have already taken over Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, our revolution. They'll take over Rebellion PAC too. There's no way you can reform the Democratic Party. When you are being eaten by the bear, there's no way you're going to change the bear on the inside. The bear's going to crap you out. Again, looking at this debacle of a story, we have to look at this and say, and I want to just read this I want to just read a few short excerpts here. If Joe Manchin joined the Progressive Caucus, would they endorse him, Uygur asked? The answer is very likely yes, because they don't care about progressive values. They just care about protecting the powerful. Cenk, I thought you said that in 2021, we could trust the progressive leadership. That people like AOC, Pramila Jayapal, Ayanna Presley, they can be trusted. Turns out not. And these same progressive lawmakers don't even show up on your show anymore, Cenk. It seems like they were just playing the game with your viewers.
And those same progressive people don't show up on progressive shows anymore. The same people that were in all the progressive shows when they were trying to get elected, stop going to the progressive shows and only go to MSNBC and CNN after they get elected. It's weird. There's no what's that? Loyalty? That's not loyalty per se, but something like loyalty, right? I don't know. Loyalty works.
All the independents and progressives in the 2016, 2018, and 2020 election. How's that keeping your powder dry turned out for you? Okay, and so again, with the last paragraph here, last sentence. So the source that was giving this information to TYT, of course, said, national progressives are paying attention to the CPC. Win or lose in Ohio, their credibility is shot. Well, of course their credibility is shot. Because it goes deeper than that. See, the progressive lawmakers right now that we got, AOC, Pramila Jayapal, Ayanna Presley, I'm saying progressive, air quotes, Ro Khanna, all of them. See, they're the next in line. Nancy Pelosi is in her 80s. She's senile as an old bat. Dianne Feinstein, U.S. Senator. He's 88 years old. If she gets reelected, she'll be 91. And there's reports already showing that many of her colleagues are finally admitting there's something wrong with Dianne Feinstein. There is. She's got short-term memory. Corporate Democrats control the game. And the thing is, our progressive lawmakers, they're okay with being smacked around by leadership. If anything, if I was in their shoes, I would be aggressive, push back, rock the boat, because these lawmakers don't respect them. I want to pull up this article here. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi privately blamed progressives for nearly costing Democrats the House majority in 2020 and later fumed that Representative Camilo J. Paul and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez were competing for Queen Bee of the Left, according to a forthcoming book that she's writing about. That's right. We talked about this earlier. New York Times reporters Jonathan Martin and Alexander Burns pull back the curtain on Pelosi's internal frustrations in their forthcoming book, This Will Not Pass, Trump, Biden, the Battle for America's Future, due to release on May 3rd. Punchbowl News reported on some excerpts of the book reporting on Friday morning. Democrats were expected to maintain the possibly even expand their majority in the U.S. House of Representatives in 2020, given President Donald Trump's unpopularity. Instead, they lost a dozen seats on net, nearly losing their majority in the chamber. Some of the districts Democrats lost in places like South Florida and South California included high concentrations of Latino and Asian immigrants, a warning sign for Democrats' electoral prospects. In a few strictly confidential conversations, she pointed a finger leftward, the officers wrote. Pelosi told one senior lawmaker that Democrats have alienated Asian and Hispanic immigrants with loose talk of socialism. In some of the communities, the Italian Catholic speaker said Democrats had not been careful enough about the way they spoke about abortion among new Americans who were devout people of faith. So here's how you know this is all bullshit. Number one, we talked about this in Hard Lens Media during the 2020, and with the aftermath of the 2020 election and throughout 2021. The reason why the Democrats lost their seats was because, again, you had neoliberal corporate Democratic incumbents who weren't reaching out to voters. The Democratic Party wasn't doing anything at all. In fact, they were focused on derailing progressives, smearing progressives. But then again, these same corporate incumbents, what was their message? Oh, I'm conservative. I'm Republican light. Typical Democrat playbook. Now, the thing is...
Welcome back, my regular intellectual curiosity. Welcome back.
They lost majority because they couldn't give anything. And the Democrats were all focused on Biden, how nothing's going to fundamentally change, and we have to be pragmatic. That was a message from the Democratic Party, the incumbents in the United States Senate.
Still thanking this bull for Kira Hellfire giving me a nice bowl to smoke the second half. I got enough for a couple more followers. Anybody else wants to join the Twitch stream, which I'll be running about a half hour later than the YouTube stream because, yeah, censorship.
Who are part of the Democratic Party and incumbents in the United States House of Representatives who are part of the Democratic Party. These are facts. And here it is, Mama Bear, you know, the one who AOC and the other progressive members in Congress decided to reinstate as Speaker of the House. Even though during the first months of 2021, in January, when Jimmy Dore, Cornel West, Breonna Joy Gray, Justin Jackson, and so many others did a live stream town hall why we need to do a forced vote for Medicare for all to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi and put Medicare for all on the House floor for a vote, especially during the height of the pandemic in 2020. And what did our oh-so-brave progressive lawmakers do? They said that it was violence. They ignored it. Now's not the time. Cenk Uygur was doing cartwheels defending AOC and then coming up with a lie on how McCarthy was going to become Speaker of the House. Turns out Jimmy Dore was right. Again, hashtag Jimmy Dore was right. Let's make that a trend. Seriously, folks, because he's right. And look, I hate saying this. I had high hopes for the progressives way back in 2018. I had the audacity to hope. Boy, oh boy, am I sorry about that. Big waste of time. Continuing on, again, the article talks about how the speaker told a colleague that Jayla Paul, the chairwoman of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and AOC were vying to be the queen bee of the left, but the reward might be serving in the House minority after the next election, according to the book. Despite holdups and the intra-party squabbling, Pelosi got the necessary votes to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law on November 5th, with 13 Republicans voting in favor of the legislation, but she was still miffed at top progressives, who she blamed for at least temporarily derailing the bill's passage. Jayla Paul served as a mentor and source of guidance to members of the progressive squad, including Ocasio-Cortez. Political Report in 2019 was the two congresswomen sharing a box of tomato soup on Ocasio-Cortez's Instagram Live. Great. Enjoy your soup. So what's the takeaway from this? The squad? The name of the squad. Folks, that was just a mean slur that Nancy said to AOC and her fantastic friends. They don't even work together, not a real voting bloc. And Premier Jayla Paul, she's abandoning progressives. So I got a video here, and I want...
You got a video here, and they're gonna censor you. Perfect. All right, we're good on them, really. I wanted to move on to Jimmy. So Jimmy was talking about Elon Musk under attack. And then we'll move on to Elon. The Elon interview.
Value. And it excited some people because he seems to be a free speech absolutist, Elon Musk. And free speech, turns out, I thought everybody was for free speech in America. Turns out they're not. Half the country who voted for Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton are super, super excited about censorship. That thing we're supposed to think is the worst thing in the world, they're all for it. So could you want to, here's how Twitter freaked out. Want to see how Twitter freaked out? Oh, look at that. It's got the yellow and blue. Isn't that nice? Retweet if you're going to bail on Twitter if Elon Musk is successful in his hostile takeover. Boycott Tesla. 5,700 likes. That's very popular.
Is that Billy Baldwin, the actor Billy Baldwin?
I don't know who that is, but it's a blue check, and he's for Ukraine. So isn't that nice? Cherry Jacobus says, I told you all Elon Musk would ruin Twitter when he became the largest shareholder. He left the board because it would limit his ownership to 15%. He now wants the whole company. Yes, I will quit Twitter immediately if he's allowed to buy it.
I have a question.
Oh, my God.
Who the fuck is Sherry Jacobus?
That's right.
Why would I give a shit?
And this is exactly like the people who said, I'm moving to Canada if Trump wins. And then no one moved to Canada.
Yeah. You're an addict. You're not getting
Nobody
on Twitter.
moved to Canada.
You silly.
Marcus Hutchins, a blue check, said, not sure I like the part of capitalism where Elon Musk can afford to buy and ruin anything I enjoy. The last thing Twitter needs is to become 8chan 2.0 in the name of free speech.
Why is free speech in quotes as if they're not talking about free speech?
Like that, why do they put it? It's like, are you
you
talking
think
about
speaking freely is what free speech means? It's like free credit report. It's not free.
It's not free. I don't know what they do that. I don't know what they mean when they put free speech in quotes. I don't know.
He doesn't know what he means. He's a moron.
Yeah, I know.
Look at the last. I don't like the part where Elon Musk can afford to buy and ruin. Amazon just bought and ruined Lord of the Rings. Like, what are you talking about? You mean the main part of it?
You mean the main part of capitalism where rich people get to buy whatever they want
and ruin it?
And ruin it. Yeah. Okay. They want that old thing back where Nazis with green frog icons and QAnon nuts and Trump and his Russian bot-fueled MAGA hordes could swarm and harass people on this platform rather than being confined to Gab or Gitter and Russian disinformation flowed freely. They need it. They need censorship.
I can't believe that she's unironically saying Russian disinformation while she advocates a social gulag of Gab and Gitter.
Russian disinformation while she advocates a Soviet era
Siberia,
gulag.
yeah.
That's exactly
the Siberia of social media, Gab and Getter.
Here's our favorite pretend progressive corporatist piece of it, Anand Giridharadas. Now he's got a new.
I gotta speed it up so they don't fucking throttle me on YouTube. Sorry, but yeah, we gotta get more through a whole nother interview still. So let's move it along.
Corporate job. He's over at something called the Inc. So there's a new corporation that they can't love this guy because he pretends to be against the corporation when he's actually not, which is why corporations love him because they can virtue signal. Go ahead.
He's got stylish yet white hair, so that's a very good.
That's very good.
Look.
Yes.
And also he helped. He worked for those people to help cover up OxyContin. Was addictive.
No, he worked for Time Magazine. I mean, he worked for the New York Times and he worked for MSNBC. He worked for Vice. He's worked for every shitlib organization that's in bed with the intelligence community.
He also worked for that company. His dad did, and then he did as well.
Oh, I didn't know. That's great to know. He says the solution to Elon Musk colonizing Twitter like it's space isn't me tweeting less. It's standing up against Musk.
Yeah, I'm going to do the Elon interview after this. And then I did have one other clip with Elon. And then the last videos of the night was going to be Jordan Klepper. I want to do something. Jordan Klepper had a thing that I wanted to go over. And I can't do that one on YouTube. So that'll be after I cut the YouTube stream. And then also, shit, there was one more. But you can't do certain things on YouTube. So join me on Twitch, please. Anybody on YouTube. I always drop the stream in there. I always drop the link in there because YouTube censors me more than Twitch does. I have not had a strike yet, although, to be fair, I say the same kind of things that Jackson Hinkle and Haas say. I just say them less hyper-focused, and I don't fucking beat it to the death and scream it out for 16 hours. And I don't just talk about Ukraine the whole day. So I think that's why I haven't, and I don't have a show. I have nobody. I just hang out with a few friends and a few random joiners. And I always love the random joiners. Thank you so much for the random joiners. I love you guys. And thank you, friends, for finding me again. So let's keep going.
Against his what? And his free-flowing ideas idea? His free speech idea? You want to stand up against him?
Thank you, Jai Shri Ram. Ooh, that's a Jai Shri Ram. Jai Shri Ram. I don't know what language that's supposed to be, so I don't know what kind of accent I'm supposed to put on, what kind of emphasis, but welcome to the show. We're talking Elon Musk in a minute. We're talking Jimmy talking censorship, and then we're going to listen to the Jimmy interview, or the Elon interview. So we're doing Elon and Jimmy talking about Elon, and then the Elon interview.
But what are you against? Free speech. That's what they're against.
They all colonized Twitter. That's an amazing thing. It was people speaking freely. Then it was colonized by them.
Right,
You even have the check mark. Like,
I
don't even know how I got one. And then that's unbelievable.
Wait. So Dan Price, he's the CEO who is takes $75,000 and say he says if you think a billionaire buying Twitter is bad, wait until you hear about every TV station, newspaper, telecommunications company, computer and phone maker, social media site, Twitter's original and current ownership, and literally every other big company.
Yeah, you're supposed to pick the billionaires, like the good billionaire that's your team's billionaire.
Yeah, that's right.
And then be against the other billionaire.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, here's what I said. I'm leaving Twitter because I'm scared that if Elon Musk buys Twitter, he will protect free speech rights of people I don't like and won't censor enough. Censorship is what everyone wants. I mean, it's what every tweet that I'm allowed to see wants.
Oh, man. That's, yeah, that's actually, somebody, sorry guys, those of you on Twitch, we do have a couple people on YouTube. If Elon buys Twitter, then does that mean he can pardon Trump and allow him to have his platform? Not simply buying it, but if he decided to get on the board, he could push for that kind of thing. He has not, yeah. That's what everybody's thinking, is that if Elon buys Twitter, he will be on the board and he will open up free speech, and people are getting excited about that. It could be just a ploy to keep people away from Panquake. Panquake being a blockchain Twitter that could be taking over. This all seems to be happening right around the time Panquake is releasing. So we will see if it's just a ploy, if it's actually a way to keep censorship and keep us away from. I'm interested to see how this plays out. I'm really excited and interested. Yeah, I could have said all of that during the commercial, and instead I wasted a fucking rant on a... Anyway, but yeah, I'm interested to see how this plays out. Yeah, I'm very interested, actually. Like, I hope it's good for Twitter. Like, there's a platform that's already well built, and it's a way for people to... I mean, if they can open up the free speech lanes and not have the algorithms screw, free speech, make people... there's so many ways that the algorithms are built to screw people that they select.
Public health policy and everyone is okay with it, but
I've literally seen it on this show. My moderator can vouch for me. When we first started streaming on YouTube, my streams would get like 100 views or so. Not the first way, but like after about a month, it was getting 100 views. Since I've been anti-war, I've been back down to like 10 to 20. I was getting 100 views. Now with anti-war, I'm back down to 10 or 20. So that kind of stuff does happen. I've seen it firsthand. I'm a very small, nothing, little, just kind of hobby, ranting at the end of the night, stony bartender here, ranting about politics, living in an apartment. I don't have a lot of shit. I'm just a bartender who gets mad, trying to get stoned and chill. But yeah, I've seen it on my own side. So... on the bigger channels, I've heard them screaming for many years, and I believe them. I definitely believe them. I've seen it,
Elon Musk owning a Twitter, and they're outraged? If Jeff Bezos can own the Washington Post, Elon Musk can own Twitter. That's 88,000 likes. This one's 73,000 likes. Free speech making a comeback. Mark Zuckerberg put up $500 million to interfere in a presidential election. Elon Musk is putting up 100 times as much to save democracy. It's a testament to the insanity of our times that Zuckerberg is heralded as a hero while Elon is vilified. Over here, so let me get this straight. The progressive left is now rooting for Saudi Arabia, Wall Street, Vanguard, BlackRock, and against free speech, liberty, and the dude who makes electric cars and is going to Mars. What? Yes, the guy makes electric cars, which you think would be an environmentalist.
No, free speech, yes, Kira, I definitely agree. Free speech is one thing, inciting violence is another thing, and a permanent ban for a political figure that big is also a very big deal as well. So yeah, that's a lifetime ban. That's kind of intense. Was it just a 1-year ban? If it's a 1-year ban, then that's fine. But it wasn't a 1-year ban because it's been more than a year. So lifetime ban's a little intense for somebody who has that much of a voice and can just take their voice elsewhere too. They literally can just take their voice elsewhere, which is what they've done. So Twitter wants those people back. Really. Twitter wants those people back. The people with that big of a platform, Alex Jones, he's still going strong. People still watch him on a regular basis. Deleting him from YouTube and Twitter didn't stop him.
Stream. And he's for free speech, but
it just concentrates those people in a smaller bubble so that those people aren't seeing anything outside of that bubble now. It's just concentrated them into their bubble. It doesn't allow people to try to break through. It doesn't allow people to try to get them some dialogue. I'm all about dialogue. I think we need to have dialogue. I think you need to find things that you can agree with people on all sides, of all political shapes. You can find issues that you can agree with them. You can usually find an issue with everybody, right? You can find one issue with every person that you bump shoulders into that you guys agree on, no matter what their political outlook. So we should got to stop canceling people.
All the shit libs are in because you know who owns Twitter? Saudi Arabia is a big owner.
Yeah, that guy came out. That Prince,
Wall Street, Vanguard, all these equity corporations. That's who you want to have own Twitter.
How many of these assholes own Teslas, by the way? The rich assholes that don't want Elon Musk to buy it?
That's right.
I tell you what, everyone out here has a fucking Tesla. Like,
let's go to the next one. Vanguard.
Granted, the guy has a short life, and his financial corruptions and some of the things he has done to American workers is absolutely horrible. And the some of the things he's done in politics could be considered. Like that bomb that he dropped in Syria is a war crime. From everything that I read, that the Moab bomb that he dropped in Syria is a war crime, and he could spend a handful of years in a political prison, absolutely. But I don't know if January 6th deserves life in jail. I don't. It didn't have as much violence as. I don't know. It's. I don't hype January 6th as much, I guess. I don't. As many people died in the freaking almost every single major protest we've had in this country in the last 10 years. Like, there's always a couple deaths, it seems like now, because police happen and violence happens, and that seems to be our mindset now. It doesn't happen in other countries, riots and protests. I don't know what ours always seem. I guess, well, and then other nations, they're completely unleashed, and like every protest has like 30 freaking shootings. So we're, I guess, on one side of the spectrum. But I don't know if sorry. But I would say that his other crimes, the Moab bomb dropped in Syria, is a crime. It's a criminal act. It is a war crime that he used for a dick measuring contest. I would say that.
Is now the largest shareholder of Twitter. Vanguard is also the largest shareholder of Pfizer.
Oh, thank God. Freedom.
Huh. Oh, freedom. Thanks. Imagine the threat to freedom and democracy if people can just say what they think. Here's Business Week. Business Week said, I'm sure Defiant DL's found this. He says, billionaires Jeff Bezos' Washington Post buy marks a fascinating cultural transition in America. Then they also say, Elon Musk's attempt to buy Twitter represents a chilling new threat. Billionaires trolls take over social media. Boy, that doesn't seem consistent.
A fascinating cultural transition?
Yes. But now this is a chilling new threat. So Jeff Bezos is a fascinating transition. Elon Musk is a chilling new threat. Elon Musk has also offered to buy CNN Plus for $28.
Bearded Barracuda.
That's well over market value too. They do well to take it.
And now let's get to Robert Reich.
Well, Bearded Barracuda, thanks for the follow. Guess I gotta pack another bowl. Fuck. All right. Thanks, guys, for coming. Visiting the late night Stony Progressive, late night bartender coming home from work, bitching about news while I try to chill out and get ready for the next day, right? Let's come have a discussion about politics. I don't know. I know, so yeah, I mean, Kira, if you're still around. Oh, there you are. And yeah, it's the person, my one of my good friends has completely the same agreement with you, 100% on your agreement, my best friend. So, I have a slightly different opinion, I guess, and I am upset about war crimes. The last 15 presidents have all been criminals. So yeah. And I don't like to hyper-focus on one person and especially one issue. And I don't know anything about January 6th, I guess, because all the footage I've seen has been a kind of a standard, out-of-control protest. Nothing, and yeah, he definitely. I wouldn't call it treason. I wouldn't call it treason. I guess that's. But my friend agrees with you. My best friend completely agrees with you and argues this all the time with me. And it's we can share different opinions. Yeah, censorship is crazy. I completely censoring someone's voice, deleting someone's voice. It's intense. We're supposed to be free speech.
So because everyone's freaking out about Elon Musk buying Twitter, Robert Reich, who's the former Clinton labor secretary, I'm pretty sure, and he likes to pretend he's a progressive. He's not. Robert Reich is what they call a gaslighting sheep herder propagandist for the establishment. So he says things that you like he actually is for workers and he's for the environment, and but he actually works to get you to shut up and vote for the people who are against all those things. The Hillary Clintons, the Joe Biden, they're against all the things that he says he's for.
Big
and then he tells you to vote for them.
I've had this. I don't even like to try to talk Trump
stuff.
stuff.
He's a gaslighting, a sheep herd of progressives.
Those kind of people are more religious about their politics.
He's the enemy.
There's no changing them. There's no swaying them. They're they bought into it like a religion.
He says this morning Musk bid for $54.
He's always trying to tell me to talk about Trump people, and I'm like, I can't talk to him.
Than Twitter's stock price in January before Musk
There's
started buying. Anyone concerned about another oligarch taking over a news source? Who the fuck do you think owns Twitter right now?
It's team sports. It's something more intense than
Wall Street and
intellectual
Saudi Arabia.
conversation.
That's who owns it now. Are you happy?
I like to have conversations, so you guys seem
non-oligarch news source
open to thought at least. Thank you for being open and
what
chilling.
What news source is not owned by an oligarch? That are you aware of? Are you aware of any, Robert? No, that's why he doesn't mention any. Trump must never be allowed back on Twitter. That's what this is about. This is about we can't have Trump's ideas out there. And the irony is right after he tweets that.
So thanks for the follow. I got 3 follows in a row here.
Block me from your Twitter feed?
Thanks, guys.
After he just said this
toast
guy
one
needs
up
to stay
again.
blocked, he starts screaming for free speech.
Get so freaking baked I can't fucking think.
Right underneath it,
I'm caffeinated. Let's do it.
For these, but not for
again,
me.
doing some.
That's exactly what that is.
LA Kush candy.
Okay, so when I looked at the article for the
and
oh shit. I guess you get to in the article, but
topping that off with some Ruby Slippers wax.
And it was these 2
Cheers, guys.
And I was thrown off with the blocking thing because that's the number one shitlib thing. They pass around automatic. I'm blocked by people I would have never spoken to or known because you could just be put on a list and pre-blocked. That doesn't even jive with what the rest of the shitlibs want is to get rid of them. They like the blocking feature.
Yeah, that's
like
weird.
Trump.
Yeah. So I'm just you're just pointing out he's a super hypocrite. Yeah.
And Bearded Barracuda, that sounds like a nickname that is some sort of niche I don't understand.
That's what I was pointing out. So he wrote an article. He wrote an article in The Guardian and about how dangerous another billionaire.
Kira, I will agree with you there. I will agree with you there. The presidential seat does look like a seat that went from a garbage chair to a burning fire of a garbage. And I am more nervous about the next couple elections than I would have been 10 years ago. So I'll agree with you there. Absolutely.
Free speeches. I'm not kidding. Donald Trump had 88 million Twitter followers before Twitter took him off its platform. just 2 days after the attack on the Capitol, which he provoked in part with his tweets. Trump's social media accounts were also suspended. Right. These moves were necessary to protect American democracy. But Elon Musk, the richest man in the world with 80 million Twitter followers, wasn't pleased. Musk tweeted that the U.S. tech companies shouldn't be acting as the de facto arbiter of free speech. And he's right.
Yeah, it was just him complaining.
Yeah,
Nobody
right.
else had a problem with it, except
Right.
this one billionaire.
Musk advocates free speech, but in reality, it's just about power. Power compelled Musk to buy $2.64 billion in Twitter stock, making him the largest individual stock shareholder. Yes, the power of free speech.
Power of free speech and just randomly paused on me.
It's a power we're all supposed to have, but we don't have on Twitter. Last week, Twitter announced that Musk would be joining Twitter's board of directors, prompting Musk to promise significant improvements in the platform. What improvements? This is Robert Reich talking. What improvements does Musk have in mind for Twitter? Will he use his clout over Twitter to prevent users with tens of millions of followers from blocking people who criticize them? I doubt it. Will Musk use his clout to let Trump back on? I fear he will.
Oh, God.
Wow. Wait a minute. He wants to give the power of free speech to the former president? That's a bridge too far. Musk has long advocated a libertarian. This is Robert Reich talking. Musk has long advocated a libertarian vision of an uncontrolled internet. That vision is dangerous rubbish. There's no such animal, and there never will be. What?
Yeah, Carter was before my life, but I definitely like the fact that Carter tried to put solar panels on the White House. That was pretty good. Had some shady war deals, I guess, but the whole shady war deals, that can be deep state overlooked, I guess. I mean, every president has them because the deep state runs the military more than the president does, I feel. That's my opinion. I don't have proof. I might be a crazy conspiracy theorist, but I feel like the deep state, Halliburton, Raytheon, those companies run our military more than the president does. But that might just be my theory. And thanks for the follow, Intellectual. Cheers.
Someone has to decide on the algorithms in every platform, how they're designed, how they evolve, what they reveal, and what they hide. That's why the algorithms should be transparent. That's why it should be, what is it called? Open access. Musk has enough power and money to quietly give himself this sort of control over Twitter. What? What?
Quietly, it's major news. What the fuck?
I don't get this. Musk talks about freedom of speech, but his real power is freedom of reach.
Oh, God.
Reaching 80 million Twitter followers without accountability to anyone, including critics like me, and enough money to buy himself a seat on Twitter's. You mean the guy gets to tweet?
He doesn't answer
Oh,
to
yeah,
me.
that-
He doesn't
Robert
answer
Reich.
to me. That's right.
Robert Reich the third.
That gives mad respect. Ooh-wee. Thanks for those follows, guys. You're getting me baked. But Kira, yeah, mad respect for him doing the humanity at like 90 something now, like almost 100 or something, and still banging. But one of my good friends used to say that they did Carter's doing Habitat for Humanity for his one mistake. That one military, I can't remember. It's too late and I'm too stoned. I've been awake since 8 in the morning. It's 2 in the morning here, so. But that one mistake Carter made in whatever military skirmish or whatever it was, I can't remember. But that one mistake he's been paying for his entire life with Habitat for Humanity. Solid presidency. The CIA hated him. Deep State hated him, and they got his ass out of there. So that is, yeah. Carter did okay. In the last 100 years, it was at the Iranian hostages. That was how they got him out of office. That was the Iranian hostages were how they got him out of office. They had them hold the hostages longer so that they could make him look bad. And that was literally like the CIA helped them do it or pushed them to do it or whatever the fuck it was. But it was something else that he actually kind of like he signed off on some shit he shouldn't have signed off on or something, and that it was my politics buddy was saying that they that was their theory, was that Carter was a good president, but his one mistake he's been paying for his whole life, the rest of his life. But he's done a lot of good in overall.
He doesn't. The world's rich.
But yeah, the two good presidents, and I don't consider FDR an amazing president. FDR was pushed all the way. FDR was a rich motherfucker. No, I don't love FDR, by the way. I'm sorry, I don't. Historically, protest pushed FDR more than anything, and FDR was actually a rich asshole that was pushed at the last moment and didn't want push, kicking and screaming kind of thing. So Kennedy and Carter were the two good presidents of the last 100 years.
Rich man doesn't have to answer to me. He gets just to talk in public.
Also, I don't want to answer to him. I think we all would like to not answer to Robert Reich.
Freedom of speech and freedom of reach. It rhymes, so it must be smart.
Yeah, I was very recently, kind of pushed to that final straw with Howard Zim's book a couple years ago. I read that and I was like, okay, yep. And he talks about how protests were just rampant from 1910 to 1930s or so. Constant protests, pushing for social reform. Socialism, communism. The Communist Party was big from the 1915s to the 1920s. These were big parties and big pushes. So they that the part of that whole thing was squash. After the wars, they tried to squash that.
Enough money to buy a seat on Twitter. Not like these humble billionaires who can only afford to buy the Washington Post.
These just mom and pop billionaires.
Or these mom and pop billionaires like Jeff Zuckerberg, who bought Instagram for WhatsApp for $20 billion or whatever. What? Jeff Zuckerberg, who's got more money than most countries.
Mark
Zuckerberg, not Jeff. That's right. Musk says he wants to free the internet, but what he really aims to do is make it even less accountable than it is now. He's saying that we need more censorship than we have now. That's what Robert Reich is saying. That he's saying censorship equals accountability. Who is it who decides what gets censored, Robert? You? Hillary Clinton? Joe Biden? The government? Who do you want deciding?
Why is it in quotes? He says free.
Free,
and
I know.
He describes freedom like in a bad, like, yeah, freedom could lead to not being accountable to your club.
Yes. It can make it even less accountable than it is now. When it's often impossible to discover who is making the decisions about how algorithms are designed, who is filling social media with lies, who's poisoning our minds with pseudoscience and propaganda, and who's
pseudo.
this? They don't pseudo. I like to say pseudo.
I say pseudoscience.
So they don't want you to have free speech. Do you hear what these people are saying? The insanity.
Look at who's deciding which versions of events go viral and which stay under wraps. I thought that was supposed to be like we all
decided. I thought that
especially with viral events.
That's right. Wow. He says he wants to free the internet, but freedom would mean we aren't controlling what you can see and hear. That's what he's saying. He wants to keep it free. According to Robert Reich, free for him means someone else controlling what you can say and what you can hear or see.
He's free to not be nervous about what you're up to.
Make no mistake, this is not about freedom. Holy shit.
Well, wait, Jimmy, you have to understand. It sounds better in...
Yeah, I've heard that one too, Kira. I haven't read the books or whatever, but I had heard that they were trying to set him in for life, and he didn't want it. Washington was also rich, wouldn't want that kind of lifestyle. Like, Washington had a well-off family, wouldn't have wanted to spend the rest of his life doing public service like that, would have definitely wanted to retire into a mansion somewhere with his slaves and house quarters and all that stuff. Like, that wouldn't have, well-off family, no, wouldn't have wanted to do that.
I was just going to say,
your soul's desire for freedom.
This sounds like the one-party rule of China wrote this to tell you to shut up.
They got a Shanghai lockdown on Twitter. They're like, please curb your desire, your soul's desire. That's how it's worded. Unbelievable.
Here we go. It's about power and Musk's vision of Twitter and the internet. He'd be the wizard behind the curtain, projecting on the world screen a fake image of a brave new world empowering everyone. What? So are you saying this about the Washington Post, about Facebook, about Instagram, about WhatsApp? Who else are you saying this about?
What do you mean
are you saying this about the New York Times, which is owned by a handful of billionaires? Who else are you saying this about?
A brave new world? Like, it's the world we used to have where you could speak freely.
Yeah.
It's not new.
It's the brave old world where you actually could speak freely. This is really happening. So he wants to censor, and he wants you to think that's not about him craving power. Someone who wants to censor other people, that's about power and control. Someone wanting to give free speech is the opposite.
Well,
That's somebody wanting to give control to the people. And that's what Robert Reich, above anything, cannot have the unwashed having a voice in the culture. That's what Robert Reich and the Democratic Party and Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and other shitlibs are here to tell you. That the unwashed, like you, do not get to have a voice. That's what they're saying. In reality, the world would be dominated by the richest and most powerful people in the world. In reality, the world is, you fucking gaslighter. Who do you think
Saudi
runs
Sheikh weighed in on this? Look at you fucking crazy.
All right, guys, if you've been injured in a car accident, you have to check this out. So, I just got this.
Yeah, all right. Got a little fucking random ass. I got like 2 minutes left. Two minutes left and they do that shit to me.
The world is dominated by the richest and most powerful people in the world. That's how it runs. Do you see who runs the world, Robert? Do you think poor people run the world? Are the workers running the world now? And Elon Musk is going to turn that over by giving free speech to Twitter?
Did this guy say power over and over? I mean, it seems like power is his thing.
This is his thing, exactly.
I kind of think Elon's thing with speech, really, and not power. But you ever see House of Cards? Kevin Spacey gives a whole speech about how money is like kind of Bush League and power is the thing you want. They all have an inner Kevin Spacey. That like.
That's right.
Who's got the power? Do I have the power? The power. They always. As soon as you have people on power, you know that's what their number one thing they're after is.
That's Musk's dream, and Trump's, and Putin's. Do you see how crazy this guy is?
I wish all the citizens could speak freely as the dream of dictators.
Yeah, so he says this. Watch this. He says, and it's the dream of every dictator, strongman, demagogue, and modern-day robber baron on earth. For the rest of us, it would be a brave new nightmare. So I just wanted, just so you're sure what he's saying. This guy points it out. Oh, yes, dictators and strongmen, famously big on...
4 good, 6 okay out of 46. That's a rough nation. That's not a world power. That's a rough nation.
Unfettered free speech.
Wait, who is the rest of us? Him and a Saudi prince?
Right, yeah. Right. When he says it's the nightmare for the rest of us, it's a brave. Who are the rest of you? The Saudi
Hillary?
prince who owns Twitter now? Go ahead.
It would be me, Hillary, Chelsea, MBS.
He's literally saying that free speech is the dream of every dictator and strongman.
Jesus.
It's the literal opposite of that. That's why dictators need to censor. That's why China, go look at their internet.
Well, once you change all the definitions of basic words,
if you just
that's how you get this opposite game. We're like, oh, that word means the opposite of what it meant now.
So just in case you weren't sure about Robert Reich is way more dangerous to this country than Tucker Carlson. This guy's